Welcome back to Midnight Wanderer. It is so lovely to have you here again, settling in for another quiet exploration. Have you ever considered the silent, tireless work that unfolds in the meadows and gardens, while the world sleeps or bustles around them? A world of tiny messengers, carrying the very essence of life from one bloom to another, ensuring that the world awakens to fruit and flower. What does it mean for a planet to be woven together by such delicate threads of connection? Tonight we will wander into this gentle world together, but there is no need to focus too intently. Let this story be a soft murmur in the background of your own descent into rest. This is a quiet space, a harbour from the noise of the day, and so I give you permission to let go. Let your mind drift on the currents of my voice, and if sleep arrives before our journey ends, know that you can return to this place whenever you wish. Before we begin our gentle journey, I'd love to know what corner of the world you're listening from tonight. Feel free to share in the comments below what time it is for you as you settle in. It's a quiet way for us to feel connected in this shared space of calm. And if you find a sense of peace in these narrations, a gentle like or subscription helps other curious minds find their way here, creating a wider circle of quiet wanderers. Our story tonight begins not with a grand event, but with a quiet hum, a gentle vibration that has echoed through the ages. It is the story of a promise, a silent agreement made between the stillness of the plant world and the movement of the animal kingdom. This is the story of pollination. Before the world knew the vibrant splash of a field of wildflowers or the sweet weight of a ripening fruit, there was a stillness. Imagine a landscape painted in shades of green and brown, a world of ancient ferns and stoic conifers, where life renewed itself through the sheer chance of a passing breeze. For millions of years, this was the way. The continuation of plant life was a story told by the wind, a vast and impersonal force scattering the dust of life, hoping it would find a welcoming home. It was a successful strategy, to be sure, one that still paints our world with vast forests of pine and fir. But it was a monologue, a declaration sent out into the world with no specific recipient in mind. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, a new kind of conversation began. It started with the insects. Creatures like beetles, who had for ages crawled upon the earth and explored the dense foliage, began to find nourishment in the reproductive parts of these ancient plants. They were not gentle visitors at first. They would chew and consume, taking what they needed. Yet, in their clumsy, messy foraging, something miraculous occurred. A fine, golden dust, pollen, would cling to their bodies, and as they moved from one plant to another, they would inadvertently carry this dust with them. This was the first accidental whisper of a dialogue that would change the face of the planet forever. This accidental exchange was the birth of a quiet agreement. The plants, in their slow evolutionary wisdom, began to change. Over countless generations, some began to offer something more, a deliberate invitation. Instead of merely being consumed, they began to produce a little extra, a sweet, energy-rich liquid we now call nectar. This was a revolutionary act. It was as if the plant world was learning to say, "Welcome, stay a while. There is something here for you." The beetle in turn began to associate these specific plants with a reliable source of food. Its visits became less destructive and more purposeful. This was no longer just an accident. It was the beginning of a relationship, a partnership. This relationship is the very essence of pollination. It is a form of communication, a language without words. The flower, in its rooted stillness, cannot travel to find a mate. It must rely on a messenger. The pollinator, in its freedom of movement, needs energy to fuel its flight, its crawl, its existence. And so, the quiet agreement was formed, nourishment in exchange for passage. The plant offers a feast, and the pollinator in turn becomes a living bridge, carrying the genetic promise of one flower to the receptive heart of another. Think of it like an ancient postal service. operating on trust and mutual benefit. The flower carefully prepares a letter, a tiny grain of pollen that contains half of the instructions for creating a new seed, but it has no way to mail it. The pollinator arrives, a willing courier drawn in by the promise of a sweet reward. As it drinks the nectar, the flower gently stamps the letter onto its body. The courier, now dusted with gold, travels on its way, seeking another post office of a similar kind. Upon its arrival at the next flower, some of that golden dust brushes off, delivering the message and completing the beautiful silent transaction. This agreement allowed for an explosion of diversity and beauty that the world had never before seen. Before this partnership, plants competed mostly through height and breadth, reaching for sunlight in a sea of green, but now they could compete for attention. This silent conversation gave rise to colour, to scent, to shape. The monologue of the wind became a symphony of countless dialogues, each unique, each a testament to this quiet, foundational promise. It is a promise that has been kept for over 100 million years, a gentle hum of cooperation that underlies the vibrancy and abundance of the world we know. It is the reason for the apple in your hand, the wildflower in the meadow, and the quiet, persistent pulse of life that continues, unbroken, all around us. Having understood the gentle formation of this quiet agreement, let us now drift into a thought experiment, a soft focus on a world that might have been. Imagine for a moment a planet where that agreement was never fully realized, where the first clumsy beetle never found a reason to return, and the flowers never learned to speak in the language of nectar and colour. What would this world feel like? It would be a world in waiting, a landscape of quiet potential, forever on the cusp of a vibrancy it could never quite achieve. This world would not be barren, not entirely. The great ancient forests of conifers would still stand tall, their needles whispering in the wind. Ferns would unfurl their intricate spirals in the damp undergrowth. Mosses would carpet the stones in velvet green. Life would persist, carried on the breath of the wind and the currents of the water, just as it had for eons. The air would be clean, the silence profound. But it would be a world of muted tones, a symphony played only by the rhythm section of greens and browns. The bright splashes of colour that punctuate our landscapes, the fiery reds, the calming blues, the joyful yellows, would be largely absent. Flowers, if they existed at all in this world, would have no need for such extravagance. Their petals would be small, drab and functional, designed only to catch the passing breeze, not the eye of a passing bee. The air, too, would be different. The gentle perfumes that drift on a summer evening, the sweet scent of honeysuckle, the spicy fragrance of a carnation, the rich aroma of a rose would not exist. Scent, in our world, is a long-distance call, an invisible pathway of invitation. In this silent world, the air would carry only the clean, earthy smells of soil, damp leaves, and pine resin. It would be a pure world, but a world without the poetry of fragrance. The sensory landscape would be simpler, less layered, less rich. And what of our food? The grocery stores we know, filled with a cornucopia of shapes and colours, would be a phantom of their current selves. Imagine walking through the aisles. The grains would still be there. Wheat, rice, corn, all children of the wind. But the vibrant produce section would be a shadow. There would be no apples, no cherries, no blueberries, no almonds, no strawberries, no watermelons. The humble squash, the cucumber, the tomato, all of these rely on an animal messenger to carry their pollen from one blossom to another. Even our morning coffee and the chocolate we treasure are gifts from this quiet agreement. Without pollinators, our plates would be less colourful, our diets less varied, and our connection to the sweetness of the earth profoundly diminished. The sounds of this world would be different too. The steady, meditative hum of a bee in a lavender patch, the frantic whir of a hummingbird's wings, the gentle flutter of a butterfly. These small sounds are the auditory texture of a healthy ecosystem. They are the sound of the agreement at work. In a world without pollinators, a deep quiet would settle over the meadows. The air would be stiller, the intricate web of life that depends on the fruits and seeds of pollinated plants, the birds that feast on berries, the mammals that gather nuts, would be vastly simpler, and many of these creatures might not exist at all. This world in waiting is not a dystopia, not a wasteland. It is simply a quieter, less interconnected and less vibrant version of our own. It is a world that highlights, through its absence, the profound gift of the pollinator. It shows us that colour, scent, and the sweet taste of fruit are not mere decorations. They are the physical manifestations of a relationship, the beautiful results of a conversation that has been unfolding for millions of years. This gentle contrast allows us to more deeply appreciate the world we have, a world not in waiting, but in constant, vibrant dialogue, all thanks to the first messengers who answered the flower's silent call. From that quiet, colourless landscape we imagined, let us now return to the moment of Genesis, the instant the first connections were made. The world was indeed in waiting, and it was the humble beetle that was among the very first to answer the call. Long before the bee or the butterfly graced the ancient skies, the beetle was there, crawling through the dense prehistoric foliage. To understand their role is to understand the very roots of this grand planetary partnership. 150 million years ago, the world was a different place. The continents were drifting towards their modern positions, and dinosaurs still roamed the land. The first flowering plants, known as angiosperms, were just beginning to emerge in this ancient world. They were not the delicate, complex flowers we know today. They were likely simple, robust, bowl-shaped structures, closer to magnolias or water lilies in their design. They were sturdy, built to withstand a world that was not always gentle. And it was this sturdiness that made them the perfect stage for the first pollinators. Beetles are an ancient order of insects, with fossils dating back almost 300 million years. By the time the first flowers appeared, they were already well established. Their primary method of exploring the world was through chewing and burrowing. Their mouthparts were designed for biting and grinding, not for delicately sipping nectar, and so their initial interactions with these new strange floral structures were likely quite clumsy. Scientists refer to this early form of pollination as meson soil pollination, a wonderfully descriptive term. Imagine a beetle, drawn by a novel scent or the promise of a nutritious meal, landing on one of these early open-faced flowers. It would move around, chewing on the petals, feeding on the pollen itself, which is rich in protein. In this process, its hard, shell-like body would become dusted and coated in pollen grains. It was an inefficient system, to be sure. The beetle was a messy guest, often damaging the very flower that was feeding it. But it was effective. As the beetle lumbered from one flower to the next, it carried with it the genetic material for the next generation. The plant sacrificed a few petals, a portion of its pollen, and in return it achieved something invaluable: targeted pollen delivery. This was a profound evolutionary leap. The wind was a generalist, scattering pollen everywhere. The beetle was a specialist, even if unintentionally at first. It moved between similar-looking and similar-smelling flowers, creating a much more direct line of communication. The flowers began to adapt to these new messengers. They developed tougher petals to withstand the chewing. They began to produce stronger, fruitier, or even spicier scents, smells that would be attractive to a beetle's sensibilities. They offered up their pollen as a direct reward, a clear payment for the service rendered. The magnolia flower is a beautiful living fossil that gives us a glimpse into this ancient past. Its tough, leathery petals are thought to be an adaptation to withstand the chewing and clambering of beetle pollinators. It produces no true nectar, but offers its protein-rich pollen as the primary reward, a direct link to that primordial arrangement. When we look at a magnolia, we are looking at a design that has worked for over 100 million years, a testament to the enduring success of this first partnership. These first messengers, the beetles, laid the groundwork for everything that was to come. They were the pioneers in a new world of cooperation. They proved that a partnership between the rooted and the winged, the stationary and the mobile, was not only possible, but profoundly advantageous. Their clumsy, messy dance was the first step in an evolutionary ballet that would eventually lead to the intricate and delicate interactions we see today. They were the ones who first heard the flowers whisper, and by answering, they helped to shape the beautiful, complex language of pollination that was just beginning to be written. Once the first messengers, the sturdy beetles, had begun their clumsy and wonderful work, the plant world was set upon a new evolutionary path. The initial agreement, pollen for passage, had been made, but now the conversation could become more nuanced, more sophisticated. If a plant could attract one kind of messenger, could it perhaps attract a better one, a gentler one, a more efficient one? This gentle, competitive pressure led to one of the most beautiful explosions of creativity in the history of life, the development of the language of flowers. This is not a language of words, but one of colour, scent, and form, a silent poetry designed to capture the attention of a passing world. As other insects like flies, bees, and eventually butterflies evolved, the floral landscape began to change in response. Flowers started to compete for the most effective pollinators, and they did so by creating increasingly specific and alluring advertisements. This process, a reciprocal evolution between two species, is called coevolution, and it is like a beautiful, millions of years long dance. The pollinator develops a preference, and the flower adapts to meet it, and in doing so they become more and more attuned to one another. Colour was one of the first and most powerful words in this new language. While beetles and flies are attracted to duller colours like whites and greens, the emergence of bees changed everything. Bees have a different way of seeing the world. Their eyes are sensitive to blue, violet and yellow, and they can also perceive ultraviolet light, a spectrum completely invisible to us. In response to this, flowers began to produce pigments that created these vibrant hues. A field of blue lupines or yellow sunflowers is not just beautiful to us. It is a giant screaming sign to a bee that says, "Food is here." Furthermore, many of these flowers developed patterns that are only visible in the ultraviolet spectrum. To our eyes, a flower might look like a simple, solid yellow, but to a bee, that same flower might have a series of lines, dots, or even a bullseye pattern pointing directly to the centre where the nectar is located. These are called nectar guides. Think of them as landing strips on an aircraft carrier, a secret, illuminated map that only the intended visitor can read, guiding them in for a safe and efficient landing. Scent became the next verse in the floral poem. A fragrance is a message carried on the wind, a promise whispered from a distance. Different flowers develop different scents to attract different partners. Sweet, light fragrances were produced to attract bees and butterflies, who associate these smells with the sugary nectar they seek. Other flowers, however, developed much stranger perfumes. Some evolved musky, fermented scents to attract beetles, mimicking the smells of the decaying organic matter they often frequent. And as we will later explore, those that wished to attract pollinators of the night developed heavy, heady perfumes that could travel far in the still, cool air. Each scent is a chemical signature, a specific invitation sent out to a specific guest. The very shape of the flower became a critical part of its language as well. The simple, open bowls of the first flowers gave way to a stunning variety of forms, each one a unique puzzle for a particular pollinator to solve. Long tubular flowers evolved in partnership with creatures that had long tongues, like butterflies and hummingbirds. These flowers essentially hide their nectar at the bottom of a deep well, making it inaccessible to other insects with shorter mouthparts. It is an exclusive invitation, ensuring that only the pollinator who is perfectly equipped for the task will be rewarded. Other flowers developed intricate landing pads. broad petals perfectly suited for a butterfly to rest upon while it feeds. Some, like the snapdragon, even have a kind of trigger mechanism, a lower petal that only an insect of a certain weight, like a bumblebee, can push down to access the nectar inside. Each shape is a physical dialogue, a lock that has evolved in perfect harmony with a specific key. This breathtaking diversification is the result of millions of years of listening and responding, a silent, ongoing conversation that has painted our world with an inexhaustible palette of beauty. Having followed the intimate journey of a single pollen grain, we now pull our focus back to meet its most iconic and industrious courier. Let us enter the world of the honeybee, a creature whose life is a testament to the power of community, communication, and the tireless work that turns sunlight into sweetness. Our journey with the pollen grain ended at the moment of its arrival, but for its courier, the honeybee, the work is far from over. The bee has a home to return to, a community that depends on the fruits of its labour. To truly understand the honeybee, we must look beyond the individual and witness the marvel of the hive. The hive is not merely a nest or a shelter. It is a city, a factory, and in many ways a single, living, breathing organism with a collective warmth and a shared purpose. From the outside, a hive might appear as a simple wooden box in an apiary, or a hollow in an ancient tree. But as we draw closer, we can feel a presence, a low, resonant hum that emanates from within. It is the sound of thousands of wings beating in unison, the sound of life and industry. This sound is more than just the byproduct of flight. It is the hive's own breath, a form of climate control. By vibrating their flight muscles, the bees generate heat, and by fanning their wings, they circulate air, maintaining a remarkably constant internal temperature, keeping their developing young perfectly warm, regardless of the weather outside. Let us imagine ourselves shrinking down and passing through the small entrance, guarded by diligent worker bees who inspect every arrival. Inside, the world is a labyrinth of golden wax, a city of perfect, six-sided cells. This is the honeycomb, one of nature's most perfect architectural achievements. The hexagonal shape is no accident. It is the most efficient way to pack the maximum number of cells into a given space using the minimum amount of material. It is a feat of engineering, built not from a blueprint, but from instinct. The air inside is thick with the sweet, warm scent of honey, pollen, and beeswax. This is the scent of home, a complex perfume created by the collective body of the colony. The hive is a world of perpetual twilight, where the senses of touch and smell are far more important than sight. The bees navigate this darkness with their antennae, which are covered in thousands of sensory cells. They can taste, touch, and smell the world around them, recognizing their sisters, assessing the quality of honey, and receiving chemical messages that flow through the colony. The hive is a model of perfect organization, with different areas dedicated to different tasks. In the centre, in the warmest part of the hive, lies the nursery or brood chamber. Here the queen lays her eggs, one to each hexagonal cell. Nurse bees, the youngest of the workers, move diligently from cell to cell, feeding the tiny, developing larvae a special mixture of pollen and honey known as bee bread. Other sections of the comb are designated as the pantry. Here, forager bees returning from the field deposit their precious cargo. They regurgitate the nectar they have collected into cells, where other bees will fan it with their wings to evaporate the water content, slowly transforming it into thick, golden honey. In other cells, they pack the bright orange and yellow pollen they have scraped from their legs, creating a vital source of protein for the colony. This entire operation, this bustling city of wax, is held together by an invisible force, a shared identity. Every bee in the hive is a daughter of the same queen, and they are all sisters. This profound genetic link is the foundation of their selfless cooperation. They work not for themselves, but for the good of the colony, for the continuation of their shared lineage. The hive is a superorganism where each individual bee acts like a single cell in a larger body, performing its specific function to ensure the health and survival of the whole. It is this collective warmth, this shared purpose, that makes the honeybee one of the most successful and vital pollinators on our planet. It is from this heart of the community that the incredible dance of communication begins. Within the warm, fragrant darkness of the hive, where tens of thousands of sisters work in perfect harmony, one of the most wondrous forms of communication in the natural world unfolds. A forager bee, having just returned from a successful trip to a rich patch of flowers, must somehow convey the precise location of this treasure to her sisters. She cannot speak. She cannot draw a map. Instead, she performs a silent, intricate ballet known as the waggle dance, transforming her own body into a living compass, a map made of movement. This dance is not a random expression of excitement. It is a sophisticated, symbolic language that contains all the information her sisters need to find their way. Let us imagine we are watching a single returning forager as she finds a space on the vertical face of the honeycomb, a dark stage for her performance. She begins by walking in a straight line, vibrating her abdomen from side to side in a rapid, energetic waggle. This is the heart of her message. The duration of this straight run conveys the distance to the food source. A very short run, lasting perhaps only a second, might indicate a patch of flowers just a few hundred feet away. A longer run, lasting several seconds, could signal a source that is miles distant. The other bees, her audience, gather closely around her, touching her with their antennae, feeling the vibrations of her dance, carefully measuring its length to understand how far they must travel. But distance is only half of the equation. The forager must also communicate the direction. This is where the dance becomes truly extraordinary. Inside the hive there is no sun, no external landmark to use as a reference. So, the bee transposes the map of the outside world onto the vertical face of the comb. She uses the sun's position in the sky as her primary landmark, and the direction of up on the honeycomb as a symbolic representation of that sun. The angle of her straight waggling run relative to the vertical line of the comb precisely matches the angle that her sisters must fly relative to the sun's position. For example, if she runs straight up the comb, she's telling her sisters, fly directly towards the sun. If she runs straight down the comb, the message is, fly directly away from the sun. And if she runs at an angle, say 40 degrees to the right of the vertical, she's instructing them to fly at an angle of 40 degrees to the right of the sun's current position in the sky. It is a stunning act of symbolic representation, translating a complex three-dimensional journey into a simple, two-dimensional dance. After completing the straight run, the bee circles back to her starting point to repeat the dance, alternating between a circle to the left and a circle to the right. This completes the full figure 8 pattern of the waggle dance. During her performance, she will also periodically stop and offer small samples of the nectar she has collected, allowing her sisters to taste and smell the specific type of flower she has found. This adds another layer of information to her message, not just where to go, but what to look for upon arrival. What is perhaps most incredible is the bee's ability to account for the passage of time. The sun is not a fixed point in the sky. It moves. A bee might spend half an hour inside the hive performing a dance. During that time, the sun's position will have shifted. The dancing bee compensates for this, continuously adjusting the angle of her dance to reflect the sun's new, real-time position. She's not just showing them where the flowers were, she's showing them where they are now. This waggle dance is more than just a set of instructions. It is the hive's collective intelligence at work. It allows the colony to efficiently exploit the resources in its environment, to quickly redirect its workforce to the most profitable flower patches as they come into bloom. It is a living, breathing information network, a map that is constantly being updated and shared. It is a testament to the fact that communication does not require sound or sight, but merely a shared understanding, a common language. In the quiet, bustling darkness of the hive, this map made of movement ensures that the colony not only survives, but thrives. Guided by the intricate map of the waggle dance, a new generation of foragers is now ready to depart the hive. They carry with them the precise coordinates of a floral treasure, a destination whispered to them through movement and vibration. But to be a successful forager, a honeybee needs more than just a map. She needs the right equipment for the harvest. Her body is a marvel of biological engineering, perfectly designed for the delicate and essential task of gathering not just nectar, but also the precious golden dust of pollen. It is this pollen that she carries in what can only be described as tiny living baskets of gold. As a bee visits a flower, her fuzzy, electrostatically charged body becomes a natural magnet for pollen. Thousands of tiny branched hairs cover her thorax and abdomen, and as she moves within the blossom, pollen grains leap onto her, coating her in a fine yellow powder. She is, for a moment, completely dusted in the stuff of life. But she cannot simply fly back to the hive like this. The pollen would be lost to the wind. She must carefully gather and pack it for the journey home. This is where her specialised anatomy comes into play. While hovering in the air or resting on a leaf, she begins a meticulous grooming process. Using her front and middle legs, which are equipped with special bristles and combs, she systematically brushes the pollen from her head, her thorax and her abdomen, collecting it all together. She mixes the dry pollen with a small amount of nectar from her mouthparts, turning the fine powder into a stickier, more manageable paste. This golden paste is then transferred to her hind legs, where the most remarkable piece of equipment is located, the pollen basket, or corbicula. The pollen basket is not a true basket in the way we might imagine it. It is a concave, polished area on the outer surface of the tibia of her hind leg, surrounded by a fringe of long, stiff hairs. It is a shallow, secure vessel. Using her middle legs, the bee deftly presses the sticky pollen paste into this basket. She packs it down, adding more and more with each flower she visits, until she has formed 2 large, compact pellets, one on each hind leg. These pellets, glowing in the sunlight, look for all the world like a pair of overflowing baskets laden with gold. A fully loaded bee can carry pollen pellets that weigh up to 1/3 of her own body weight. It is an incredible feat of strength and balance. As she flies back to the hive, these golden orbs are clearly visible, a tangible sign of her success. Upon her arrival, she does not deposit this pollen herself. She finds an empty honeycomb cell, typically in the area designated as the nursery's pantry, and kicks the pellets off her legs, leaving them for a younger house bee to pack away. The house bee will push the pollen firmly into the cell with her head, adding a thin layer of honey as a preservative. This creates the bee bread, a vital protein-rich food source that will be used to feed the growing larvae. The pollen basket is a perfect example of coevolution, a design refined over millions of years. It is a simple, elegant solution to a complex problem: how to efficiently transport thousands of tiny, precious grains of dust across great distances. These baskets of gold are not just a food source, they are the very foundation of the colony's future, the sustenance that will raise the next generation of foragers, dancers, and queens. We have seen the hive as a bustling city, and the individual worker as a master forager, equipped with maps of movement and baskets of gold. But every city, every community has a heart, a central point from which its identity and continuation flows. In the honeybee hive, this heart is the queen. Her role, however, is often misunderstood. She is not a ruler who gives commands or directs the daily work of her daughters. The hive operates on a decentralized collective intelligence. Instead, the queen's role is something far more profound and elemental. She is the genetic heart of the colony, the living vessel of its past and the sole architect of its future. Her legacy is written in the very DNA of every single bee in the hive. The queen is physically distinct from her daughters. She's the largest bee in the colony, with a long, elegant abdomen designed for one primary purpose: laying eggs. On a warm summer day, a healthy queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs, a number that can equal her own body weight. She moves slowly and deliberately across the honeycomb, inspecting each hexagonal cell. If a cell is clean and ready, she will deposit a single, tiny, white egg. This relentless rhythmic egg-laying is the constant, steady heartbeat of the hive, ensuring a continuous supply of new workers to replace those who have reached the end of their short, industrious lives. Her connection to the colony is maintained not through orders, but through chemistry. The queen constantly produces a unique blend of chemicals or pheromones from glands in her body. This queen substance is her chemical signature, a unique perfume that permeates the entire hive. As her attendant worker bees groom and feed her, they pick up this pheromone on their antennae and bodies. They then pass it throughout the colony through contact and food sharing, in a process called trophallaxis. This shared scent acts as a unifying force, a constant invisible signal that tells every bee they belong to this specific family. It lets them know that their queen is present, healthy, and laying eggs. It is this pheromone that maintains social cohesion and even suppresses the reproductive systems of the worker bees, ensuring that the queen remains the sole mother of the colony. The queen's life begins with a journey that is both perilous and essential. Shortly after emerging as an adult, she will leave the hive on a series of nuptial flights. She will fly to a specific area where male bees, or drones, from other colonies have gathered. She will mate with multiple drones in mid-air, a process that is fatal for the males. She collects and stores all the sperm she will need for the rest of her life in a special internal organ. Once her mating flights are complete, she will never leave the hive again, except in the case of a swarm, where she might depart with half the colony to establish a new home. Her entire existence is dedicated to this singular, vital task of reproduction. She does not forage for food or defend the hive. She's constantly tended to by a retinue of her daughters, who feed her, groom her, and carry away her waste. She's the precious living core around which all activity revolves. Though she does not rule, her presence and her health dictate the entire mood and productivity of the hive. A colony with a strong, vigorous queen is a bustling, thriving metropolis. A colony that has lost its queen is a community in crisis, a body without a heart, whose first and only priority becomes the urgent task of raising a new one. The queen's legacy, therefore, is life itself. She is the unbroken thread that connects one generation to the next, the quiet, central force that ensures the golden dance of the honeybee will continue. Leaving behind the warm, communal hum of the beehive, our journey now drifts into the bright stillness of the afternoon sun. Here, a different kind of pollinator is at work, one that moves not with industrious sound, but with a silent, graceful elegance. We turn our attention now to the painted wings of the day, beginning with the delicate and ephemeral butterfly. In the quiet warmth of a sunlit meadow, we meet a pollinator that operates on an entirely different rhythm from the honeybee. Where the bee is a creature of sound and industry, a diligent worker on a focused mission, the butterfly is a being of silence and whimsy, a floating whisper of colour that drifts on the gentle currents of the air. To watch a butterfly is to watch a different kind of pollination, one that is less about collection and more about a meandering, graceful dance. It is as if the butterfly itself is a floating garden, a living blossom that momentarily visits its stationary kin. The butterfly experiences the world through a different set of senses. Its large, multifaceted compound eyes are masters of detecting motion and colour, but they see a slightly different world than we do. Like bees, many butterflies can see into the ultraviolet spectrum, allowing them to perceive the hidden nectar guides on petals. However, their colour preferences often lean towards the warmer end of the spectrum. They are drawn to bright, vibrant shades of red, yellow, orange, and purple. A field of red poppies or purple coneflowers is a powerful, irresistible beacon to a passing butterfly. Unlike the bee, which seeks both nectar for energy and pollen for protein, the butterfly is almost exclusively interested in nectar. It is a nectar specialist. Pollen is a secondary passenger, an accidental traveller in the butterfly's quest for sugary fuel. As it lands on a flower, its long, slender legs and delicate body will pick up pollen grains, but it does not have the specialised baskets or dense, fuzzy hairs of a bee for actively collecting it. The pollination it performs is a beautiful byproduct of its search for sustenance. The butterfly's relationship with a flower is also shaped by its physical form. Because it does not hover with the high energy intensity of a hummingbird, it prefers flowers that offer a place to rest. Wide, flat-topped flowers, like daisies, zinnias, or the composite flowers of the aster family, provide a perfect landing platform. Here, the butterfly can settle its painted wings, basking in the sun's warmth, while it uncoils its specialised feeding tube to drink. This preference for a resting place means it spends more time on a single flower than a busy bee might, leisurely exploring its contours. The act of feeding itself is a delicate, and precise operation. Where the bee has a relatively short tongue, the butterfly possesses a proboscis, a long straw-like tube that is kept coiled up like a watch spring when not in use. When it is ready to feed, it unrolls this amazing appendage and probes deep into the heart of the flower, reaching nectar that is often inaccessible to other insects. This allows butterflies to form special relationships with flowers that have long, narrow floral tubes, another beautiful example of coevolution. The butterfly's flight is not the direct, purposeful line of a bee returning to a hive. It is a seemingly random, fluttering journey. It drifts from flower to flower, from one patch of colour to the next, seemingly without a plan. Yet, in this meandering, it can cover great distances, carrying pollen much farther than a bee might. A bee's territory is often centred around its hive, but a butterfly is a free agent, a wanderer. This long-distance travel can be incredibly important for plant populations, as it helps to ensure genetic diversity by connecting plants that are far apart. In this way, the butterfly's gentle, floating dance weaves together the fabric of a landscape, one silent, colourful thread at a time. The gentle, meandering flight of a butterfly from one flower to the next is a beautiful sight, a small localised dance of pollination. But for some species, this dance becomes an epic, multi-generational saga that spans an entire continent. The most famous of these journeys is the Great Migration of the monarch butterfly, a breathtaking natural wonder that transforms these delicate pollinators into vital long-distance threads connecting ecosystems from Canada to Mexico. This migration is not just a journey, it is a flowing river of life, a testament to endurance, and a powerful force for pollination on a continental scale. The story begins in the late summer, in the milkweed fields of southern Canada and the northern United States. A special generation of monarchs is born. Unlike their parents and grandparents, who lived for just a few short weeks, this generation is different. They are born into a state of reproductive diapause, a kind of suspended animation. They will not mate or lay eggs. Instead, driven by the changing angle of the sun and the cooling temperatures, they are compelled by an ancient mysterious instinct to fly south. They begin their journey alone, not in a dense flock, but as millions of individual points of orange and black, all moving in the same general direction. Their flight is a perilous one. They must navigate changing weather, avoid predators, and find enough nectar to fuel their incredible voyage. This is where their role as pollinators becomes magnified. As they travel south, they are a moving wave of pollination. They stop in meadows, gardens, and prairies along their route to feed on late-blooming autumn flowers, like asters and goldenrods. With each stop, they transfer pollen, connecting plant populations that are hundreds, or even thousands of miles apart. They are genetic messengers, carrying the inheritance of a northern meadow to the heart of a southern prairie, strengthening the resilience of the plant communities they visit. Think of their migration route as a vast, continental-scale pollinator corridor. They are stitching together fragmented habitats, overcoming the barriers of highways, cities, and farmlands that might otherwise isolate plant populations. This long-distance pollen flow is crucial for maintaining genetic diversity, which is the cornerstone of a healthy, adaptable ecosystem. As they travel, they use a remarkable combination of navigational tools. They have an internal sun compass, allowing them to orient themselves by the position of the sun in the sky. But because the sun moves, they also possess a kind of internal clock, located in their antennae, that allows them to compensate for the time of day. In this way, they can maintain a steady southern course. Recent research suggests they may even be sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field, giving them another layer of directional information, especially on cloudy days. After a journey that can stretch up to 3,000 miles, they arrive at their destination, a handful of specific groves of oyamel fir trees in the volcanic mountains of central Mexico. Here, they will spend the winter clustered together by the tens of millions, their combined weight so great that it can cause the branches of the great fir trees to bow. They cover the trees in a shimmering, dormant blanket of orange and black, waiting out the cold in a state of near hibernation. As spring approaches, this incredible generation awakens. They mate, and the females begin the journey north, laying their eggs on the first emerging milkweed plants in northern Mexico and the southern United States. These butterflies will then die, their great journey complete. It will be their children and their children's children who continue the migration northward, a multi-generational relay race, until the monarchs once again arrive in the fields of Canada to begin the cycle anew. This great migration is a profound mystery, a story of instinct and endurance that weaves together the life of a single, delicate insect with the health of an entire continent, powered by a simple sip of sunlight. As the butterfly drifts on its painted wings, another daytime pollinator works to a much faster, more energetic rhythm. From the corner of our eye, we catch a flash of iridescent colour, a living jewel that hangs suspended in the air, its wings a blur of motion. This is the hummingbird, a creature whose entire existence is a high-speed ballet, a life lived on the very edge of energetic possibility. The hummingbird is not a casual visitor to the garden. It is a precision-engineered high-performance pollinator, driven by a tiny jewel-toned heart that beats at an astonishing rate. The hummingbird's metabolism is one of the fastest in the animal kingdom. To power its incredible aerial acrobatics, the ability to hover, fly backwards, and zip from flower to flower with breathtaking speed, it must consume a vast amount of energy. A hummingbird's heart can beat over 200 times per minute during flight, and it must breathe hundreds of times per minute. To fuel this internal furnace, it needs a constant supply of high-energy food, and it finds it in the same place as the butterfly, the sweet nectar of flowers. A hummingbird may need to visit hundreds, or even thousands of flowers every single day just to survive. This relentless quest for fuel makes it an exceptionally effective pollinator. It moves with a purpose and intensity that is very different from the butterfly's leisurely meandering. It is a workhorse, systematically visiting every suitable bloom in a patch before moving on to the next. This thoroughness ensures that pollen is transferred efficiently and consistently. Like the butterfly, the hummingbird is drawn to flowers by the language of colour. However, its preferences are even more specific. Hummingbirds have excellent colour vision and are powerfully attracted to the colour red. In the world of pollinators, red is the hummingbird's colour. Many insects, including bees, do not see red well. To them, it appears as a dull, unattractive grey or black. This creates a private channel of communication. A plant that produces a bright red flower is sending out a very specific signal, an invitation intended almost exclusively for hummingbirds. Flowers like cardinal flowers, trumpet vines, and red columbines are all speaking this specific dialect of the floral language. The act of feeding is a marvel of precision. The hummingbird hovers before a bloom, its body perfectly still while its wings beat up to 80 times per second, creating the characteristic hum that gives it its name. It then uses its long, needle-like beak to probe deep into the flower, far beyond the reach of most insects. Its tongue, an even more remarkable tool, is long and forked, with tiny grooves along the edges. It does not suck nectar like a straw. Instead, it darts its tongue into the nectar up to 20 times per second, and the grooves trap the liquid, which is then drawn up into its mouth. As it feeds, its head and the front of its body are often dusted with pollen. When it moves to the next flower, this pollen is transferred directly to the stigma, which in many hummingbird-pollinated flowers is positioned perfectly to make contact with the bird's forehead. It is a precise, targeted, and highly effective method of pollination. The hummingbird, in its frantic, dual-tone search for the energy to keep its own tiny heart beating, becomes a vital messenger, ensuring that the hearts of the flowers can continue to beat as well, in a rhythm of colour and life. The vibrant, energetic relationship between the hummingbird and the red tubular flowers it visits is one of the most elegant and clear examples of a profound natural process, coevolution. This is the long, slow and intimate conversation between two species, where each one acts as a powerful force of selection on the other. Over millions of years, the hummingbird's beak and the flower's shape have influenced each other, becoming more and more perfectly matched, like a key being crafted for a specific lock. This reciprocal shaping is a beautiful testament to the power of partnership in the natural world. Let us imagine this dance unfolding over the vast expanse of evolutionary time. An ancient plant species may have had flowers of a certain shape and colour, visited by a variety of different pollinators. By chance, a genetic variation might have caused some of these flowers to be slightly more reddish, or their floral tubes to be a little longer. At the same time, among an ancestral population of birds, some individuals may have had slightly longer beaks, or a better ability to see the colour red. These two random variations then found each other. The birds with longer beaks could reach the nectar in the slightly longer flowers, a food source that was less accessible to their shorter-beaked relatives or competing insects. This gave them a survival advantage. They were better fed, healthier, and more likely to reproduce, passing on the trait for a longer beak to their offspring. At the same time, the flowers that were slightly longer and redder were being more successfully and reliably pollinated by these specific birds. They wasted less pollen on less effective pollinators and set more seed. This gave them a reproductive advantage, and they passed on their traits for longer, redder flowers to the next generation. Over countless generations, this feedback loop continued. The flowers became longer and redder, and the hummingbirds' beaks became longer and more specialised to match them. This process of mutual refinement led to the stunning diversity we see today. We have hummingbirds like the sword-billed hummingbird, whose beak is astonishingly long, sometimes more than half its body length, perfectly adapted to feed from long, hanging, bell-shaped flowers that no other creature can access. We also see flowers that have evolved to be the perfect counterpart. Some species of heliconia, for instance, have flowers with dramatic curves that perfectly match the curved beaks of the hermit hummingbirds that pollinate them. The fit is so precise that when the bird inserts its beak, the flower deposits pollen on a very specific spot on the bird's head. This specialisation is a double-edged sword. For the hummingbird, it guarantees an exclusive food source with little competition. For the plant, it ensures highly efficient and faithful pollination, as the bird will likely move between flowers of the same species. However, it also creates a deep interdependence. The plant becomes entirely reliant on that specific hummingbird for its reproduction, and the hummingbird becomes just as reliant on that plant for its survival. If one partner in this delicate dance were to disappear, the other would be in grave danger. This process of co-evolution is not limited to shape and colour. The nectar itself has also been tailored. The nectar in the hummingbird pollinated flowers is typically very high in sucrose, providing the quick, high-energy fuel these birds need. It is also quite dilute compared to the nectar in bee-pollinated flowers. This is because hummingbirds need a lot of water to help regulate their body temperature and excrete the waste products of their high metabolism. So the flower provides not just food, but also drink, perfectly mixed to the bird's physiological needs. This beautiful reciprocal shaping, this millions of years long conversation between flower and beak, shows us that evolution is not just a story of competition, but also one of profound cooperation. It demonstrates how two entirely different forms of life can become so intricately intertwined that they essentially evolve as one, creating a partnership that is more resilient and successful than either could be alone. This deep connection brings our exploration of the daytime pollinators to a close, preparing us to discover the equally vital messengers who take over when the sun sets. As the vibrant colours of the day soften into the gentle blues and purples of twilight, a new world begins to stir. The garden does not go to sleep, it simply changes its shift. This chapter invites you to listen to the quiet work of the nocturnal pollinators, the messengers of the moon who tend to a world of pale blossoms and heady perfumes while we rest. As dusk settles and the last rays of sunlight fade from the sky, the garden undergoes a subtle and beautiful transformation. The bright, boisterous flowers that catered to the eyes of bees and butterflies begin to close, their petals folding inward for the night. The energetic hum of the day's activity subsides, replaced by a deep and profound quiet. But this is not an ending. For a whole community of plants and animals, this is the beginning. The garden is not falling asleep, it is waking up for its second life, a life lived in the soft silvery light of the moon and stars. The sensory landscape of the night garden is entirely different from that of the day. Colour, the dominant language of the sunlit hours, fades into shades of grey and silver. In this world of low light, vibrant reds and blues lose their power. Instead, the most successful flowers are those that are pale, white, or creamy yellow. These luminous colours act as ghostly beacons in the darkness, reflecting the faint ambient light of the moon and making them visible to nocturnal visitors. A moonflower, a datura, or a night-blooming jasmine becomes a landmark, a pale lantern glowing in the twilight. With sight diminished, the language of scent becomes paramount. As the air cools and stills, fragrances can travel farther, hanging heavy and clear. The night-blooming flowers release their most potent perfumes after sunset, a form of chemical communication that is far more efficient in the calm night air than in the turbulent sun-warmed currents of the day. The scents are often different from the light, sweet smells of daytime flowers. They tend to be heavier, richer, and more complex, a spicy sweetness from flowering tobacco, a heady, tropical perfume from a gardenia, or the intoxicating fragrance of night-blooming jasmine. These powerful aromas are the primary invitation, a fragrant pathway that guides the messengers of the moon to their reward. Many of these flowers also change their timing. They may remain tightly shut during the day, conserving their precious resources, only to unfurl their petals as evening approaches. The moonflower is the most classic example, its large, trumpet-shaped blooms opening with a speed you can almost perceive, a slow, silent explosion of white that happens only at dusk. This temporal specialization ensures that their nectar and pollen are available precisely when their intended pollinators are active, and protected from the daytime visitors who would not be effective couriers for them. The rewards they offer are also tailored to their nocturnal guests. Night-flying pollinators, like moths and bats, are often larger and have even higher energy needs than their daytime counterparts. In response, these night-blooming flowers often produce a much larger volume of nectar. It is a generous offering, a rich feast to attract and sustain these powerful and essential visitors. To walk through a garden at night is to experience this hidden world. It is to be guided not by sight, but by the intoxicating clouds of fragrance that mark the location of a blooming cereus or a hidden patch of nicotiana. It is to see the familiar landscape transformed into a place of subtle mystery and quiet activity. This is the stage upon which the night's drama unfolds, a world perfectly set for the arrival of its star performers, the humble and often overlooked moths who dance in the moonlight. In the moonlit garden, where pale flowers glow like earthbound stars and heavy perfumes drift on the still air, the first and most numerous of the night's messengers arrives. This is the humble moth, the quiet counterpart to the flamboyant butterfly. Often overlooked or misunderstood, the moth is one of the most important and widespread nocturnal pollinators on our planet. Its work is a silent, vital dance, guided by scent and the soft light of the moon, ensuring that the work of pollination continues long after the sun has set. Moths and butterflies are closely related, both belonging to the order Lepidoptera, but they have adapted to occupy different temporal niches. While butterflies are creatures of the sun, the vast majority of moths are creatures of the night. Their bodies and senses are exquisitely tuned for a world of darkness and shadow. Many moths have stout, fuzzy bodies, a kind of fur coat that helps them to retain heat during the cool night hours, allowing them to remain active when other insects have become sluggish. Their antennae are often wonderfully complex and feathery, especially in the males. These are not just feelers. They are incredibly powerful organs of smell, capable of detecting the chemical signature of a flower or a potential mate from miles away. Guided by these fragrant broadcasts, a moth embarks on its nightly foraging flight. Some moths, like their butterfly cousins, will land on a flower to feed. They are particularly drawn to flowers that offer a landing platform and are arranged in clusters, making it easy to move from one bloom to the next. As they walk across the flower, their fuzzy bodies and legs pick up a dusting of pollen, which they then carry into the night. Other moths, however, are masters of aerial acrobatics, rivaling even the hummingbird. The sphinx moths, also known as hawk moths, are the most spectacular of these. They are large, powerful flyers with streamlined bodies and narrow wings, capable of incredible speed and precision. Like a hummingbird, a hawk moth will hover in front of a flower, its wings beating so rapidly they become an invisible blur. It then uncoils its exceptionally long proboscis and sips nectar from the deep, tubular flowers that are its specialty, such as moonflowers, honeysuckle, and certain orchids. This hovering flight is an intense, energy-demanding activity, and these moths are vital pollinators for the plants that can provide them with a sufficiently rich, high-calorie reward. The moth's relationship with light is a complex one. While we often associate moths with a self-destructive attraction to artificial lights, their natural orientation is towards the moon. For millions of years, the moon was the primary source of light in the night sky. Moths evolved to use it as a navigational tool, keeping it at a constant angle to maintain a straight flight path. The tragic abundance of artificial lights in our modern world can disrupt this ancient system, disorienting them and interfering with their ability to find food and mates. In the quiet of a natural dark landscape, the moth's moonlit dance is a thing of subtle beauty and profound importance. They are not as efficient at transferring pollen on a per-visit basis as a hairy bumblebee, but they make up for it in their sheer numbers and their wider range. Moths tend to travel longer distances in a single night than many daytime pollinators, and this movement is critical for connecting distant plant populations and promoting genetic diversity. They are the quiet, unassuming night shift, the tireless workers who ensure that plants like the yucca, which has a famous and exclusive relationship with the yucca moth, can continue to survive. They are a reminder that some of the most important work on our planet happens quietly, in the dark, performed by humble creatures we too rarely stop to appreciate. following the silent, fluttering dance of the moth, we now turn our attention to another, more surprising messenger of the moon. This creature is often shrouded in myth and fear, a being of the deep night that many people find unsettling. But in the warm, arid regions of the world, particularly in the deserts of the American Southwest and in the tropics, the bat is a pollinator of immense and irreplaceable importance. Reframing our understanding of the bat, we can see it not as a creature of fright, but as a powerful and essential partner to the plants that have evolved to welcome its nocturnal embrace. The bats that perform this vital service are not the insect-eating bats that are more common in other parts of the world. They are nectar-feeding bats, specialised mammals that have evolved to live on a diet of nectar and pollen, much like a nocturnal hummingbird. They have long pointed snouts that allow them to reach deep into the large, robust flowers that cater to them. Their tongues are exceptionally long, sometimes extending up to a third of their body length, and are tipped with fine bristles, like a tiny brush, which helps them to lap up the copious amounts of nectar these flowers provide. The flowers that have co-evolved with bats are a world away from the delicate blossoms visited by bees. They are typically large, sturdy, and pale or white, making them visible in the dim light. They must be strong enough to withstand the scrabbling claws of a visiting bat. Unlike the sweet, delicate perfumes of moth-pollinated flowers, bat-pollinated flowers often emit a strong, musky, almost fermented odour, a scent that is highly attractive to a mammal's sense of smell. These flowers also tend to open only at night, and they produce a huge amount of nectar, a much richer and more substantial reward than what is offered to insects, to fuel the high metabolism of their warm-blooded visitors. The relationship between the bat and the great cacti of the desert is a classic example of this partnership. The saguaro and organ-pipe cacti produce enormous waxy white flowers that open only after sunset. As night falls, lesser long-nosed bats will emerge from their caves and travel for miles, following the scent of the blooming cacti. When a bat arrives at a flower, it may land briefly or hover, plunging its long face deep into the bloom to drink the nectar. In doing so, its furry face and chest are completely coated in a thick layer of pollen. It is an immersive experience, a full-body dusting. The bat then flies off to the next cactus, carrying a heavy load of pollen and ensuring cross-pollination. Without the bat, these iconic desert giants would be unable to reproduce. This service extends beyond the wild desert to human economies. One of the most significant plants pollinated by bats is the agave. The various species of agave are the source of tequila and mezcal. The agave plant sends up a huge flowering stalk only once in its life, a massive candelabra of blossoms that opens at night. Nectar-feeding bats are its primary pollinators. They are so crucial, in fact, that the health of the tequila industry is directly linked to the health of local bat populations. By protecting the bats, we're also protecting a significant cultural and economic resource. Bats are powerful, long-distance flyers, and their role in maintaining the genetic health of these plant populations is vital. They can carry pollen over vast distances, connecting fragmented habitats and ensuring a robust and resilient ecosystem. The bat's nocturnal embrace, then, is not something to be feared. It is a powerful, life-giving act, a fundamental process that supports entire ecosystems and even human industries. It is a perfect illustration of how even the most misunderstood creatures play a beautiful and essential role in the intricate web of life. Our journey through the night garden has been illuminated by the flutter of the moth and the powerful flight of the bat. These are the stars of the nocturnal show, but they are not the only actors on this dimly lit stage. The fabric of the night is woven with the movements of countless other creatures, an entire cast of unlikely and often unseen pollinators who contribute to the quiet, essential work of keeping the planet in bloom while we sleep. Shining a soft light on these unsung heroes reveals just how deep and wonderfully strange the web of pollination can be. Among the most ancient of all pollinators, the beetles, who we first met as clumsy pioneers in the daytime, also have many nocturnal members. Just as their diurnal cousins are drawn to the spicy fermented scents of flowers like the magnolia, many night-crawling beetles are attracted to similar aromas under the cover of darkness. They are drawn to large, pale and heavily scented flowers, often those that are close to the ground. They are not delicate visitors. They clamber and chew, continuing the mess and soil tradition of their ancestors, but in their movement from one bloom to another, they perform the same vital service, carrying pollen on their hard bodies and ensuring the reproduction of the plants that have adapted to their particular style. Even some of the smallest and most surprising creatures can play a role. In certain ecosystems, ants, which are active around the clock, can be pollinators. While they are not as efficient as flying insects, as they walk from flower to flower on low-growing plants, they can inadvertently transfer pollen. Some plants have even adapted to this, producing nectar that is easily accessible to a crawling insect. Perhaps the most astonishing of the unlikely pollinators are small, non-flying mammals. In certain parts of the world, particularly in South Africa and Australia, some species of rodents and small marsupials have co-evolved with ground-hugging flowers. Plants like the protea, for example, produce large, robust, bowl-shaped flowers near the ground that are filled with a yeasty, musky-scented nectar. At night, tiny creatures like the mouse lemur or the honey possum are attracted to this energy-rich food source. As they stick their faces deep into the flower to lick the nectar, their furry snouts become completely covered in pollen. They then scurry off to the next bloom, carrying the genetic message with them. This is a beautiful example of how nature, in its infinite creativity, finds a way. If there is a niche to be filled, some form of life will adapt to fill it. These unlikely and unseen pollinators are a profound reminder of the complexity and interconnectedness of life. They show us that the work of pollination is not limited to a few star players like the bee and the butterfly. It is a vast, decentralized network of interactions, a symphony with thousands of different instruments, each playing its own small but essential part. They are the quiet, humble contributors, the ones working in the shadows, ensuring that no flower is left behind. Their presence enriches our understanding, demonstrating that the health of our planet is upheld not just by the obvious and the celebrated, but by a whole world of quiet, unassuming, and wonderfully surprising partnerships. We have met the messengers of the day and the night, each with their own unique style. Now we delve deeper into the intricate and beautiful partnerships they have formed. This chapter explores the symphony of specialization, the way flowers and pollinators have co-evolved over millions of years to create relationships of breathtaking precision and creativity. As we have journeyed through the worlds of different pollinators, we have seen hints of a deeper connection, a specific and tailored relationship between a certain kind of flower and a certain kind of animal. This phenomenon, known as specialization, is where the grand story of pollination becomes a collection of intimate personal tales. It is here that we move beyond generalists, flowers that welcome many types of visitors, and into the realm of specialists, where a plant and a pollinator have evolved together so closely that they have become perfect partners. This relationship can be understood through a simple, tangible metaphor, that of a lock and a key. Imagine a flower as a lock, a beautiful, intricate mechanism designed to protect a treasure, its precious nectar and the potential for reproduction. The pollinator is the key, a creature with the precise shape and behaviour needed to open that lock. Over immense stretches of time, the lock and the key have been crafted together, each influencing the design of the other until the fit is perfect. This perfect fit benefits both partners immensely. For the flower, it ensures that its pollen will be delivered with high fidelity. A specialized pollinator, the key, is likely to visit other locks of the same kind, meaning the pollen is not wasted by being dropped off on the wrong floral doorstep. This targeted delivery system is far more efficient than relying on a generalist who might visit dozens of different species. For the pollinator, This specialization means it has access to a private, exclusive food source. By evolving the perfect key, it has eliminated the competition. Other insects or birds that lack the right anatomy or behaviour simply cannot open the lock and access the nectar within. This gives the specialist pollinator a reliable and secure source of energy, a pantry that no one else can raid. This mutual benefit is the driving force behind the evolution of these incredible partnerships. We have already seen examples of this principle at work. The long, tubular red flowers and the long, thin beaks of hummingbirds are a clear example of a lock and key. The flower's deep corolla is the lock, and the hummingbird's beak is the key. Many bees and butterflies simply cannot reach the nectar at the bottom. The relationship is exclusive. Similarly, the strange, musky-scented, night-blooming flowers of the agave plant are a lock that can only be opened by the key of the nectar-feeding bat. This specialization can manifest in countless ways. It can be physical, as in the length of a tongue or a beak. It can be sensory, based on a specific colour that only one type of pollinator can see well, or a scent that only one type finds attractive. It can even be behavioural. Some flowers require a specific action to unlock their pollen. The snapdragon, for instance, requires the heavy body of a bumblebee to pry open its petals. A smaller honeybee is simply not strong enough to work the mechanism. The flower is locked to all but its intended partner. These perfect fits are the result of millions of years of evolutionary dialogue. They are not static relationships, but are constantly being refined and perfected. They represent some of the most beautiful and intricate examples of nature's creativity, demonstrating that cooperation and precise partnership can be as powerful an evolutionary force as competition. As we explore some specific examples of these specialized relationships, we will see just how deep and wonderfully strange this crafting of lock and key can become. Among all the tales of specialization in the natural world, there is perhaps none so intricate, so strange, and so utterly interdependent as the story of the fig and the fig wasp. This is not just a simple lock and key relationship. It is a story of shared destiny, a biological contract written over 80 million years ago that binds these two organisms together in a cycle of life, sacrifice, and rebirth. The fig cannot survive without its wasp, and the wasp cannot survive without its fig. Their story is one of the most extreme and beautiful examples of what scientists call obligate mutualism. First, it is important to understand that a fig is not a fruit in the traditional sense. It is actually an inflorescence, a fleshy, hollow structure lined on the inside with hundreds of tiny individual flowers. The fig is essentially a secret garden, a hidden world with its flowers enclosed and facing inward, completely inaccessible to the outside world of bees and butterflies. There is only one way in, a tiny opening at the end of the fig called an ostiole. This opening is the lock, and the key is a minuscule female fig wasp, often no more than a millimetre or two in length. The life cycle begins when a female wasp, already pregnant and carrying pollen from the fig where she was born, is drawn by the unique scent of a receptive, unripe fig on another tree. She lands and begins the arduous task of squeezing herself through the impossibly small ostiole. This journey is so difficult that she will almost always tear her wings and damage her antennae in the process. She's making a one-way trip. She will never leave this fig. Once inside the secret garden, her life's work begins. The fig contains two types of flowers: long-styled female flowers, which if pollinated, will become the tiny seeds that give the fig its crunch, and short-styled female flowers. The wasp moves from flower to flower, doing two things simultaneously. First, she deposits the pollen she carried with her, fertilizing the long-styled flowers. This is her service to the fig tree, ensuring its reproduction. Second, into the short-styled flowers, she lays her own eggs, one egg per flower. The length of her ovipositor, her egg-laying organ, is perfectly matched to the length of these short-styled flowers, but it cannot reach the ovaries of the long-styled ones. This is the fig's clever way of ensuring that some of its flowers are reserved for seed production. Having completed her task, her life's purpose fulfilled, the female wasp dies inside the fig. The fig then begins to ripen, and the wasp's body is broken down by enzymes within the growing fruit. Inside the short-styled flowers, her eggs hatch, and the wasp larvae begin to feed on the plant tissue around them, growing and developing in their safe enclosed nursery. The first to emerge are the males. They are strange, wingless creatures who will live their entire lives within the darkness of the fig. Their first task is to find the flowers containing the still unemerged females and mate with them. Once this is done, the males have one final heroic task to perform. They begin to chew a tunnel through the wall of the fig, creating an escape route for their sisters. Their life's work now complete, the males also die inside the fig. Finally, the newly mated females emerge. As they prepare to leave, they pass by the now mature male flowers within the fig, which have released their pollen. The females become completely covered in this fresh pollen. They then follow the escape tunnel carved by their brothers and emerge into the outside world. They fly off, carrying their precious cargo of pollen and fertilized eggs, guided by instinct and scent to find another young fig tree, and begin the incredible, tragic, and beautiful cycle all over again. This ancient, intricate dance is a profound testament to how two species can become so deeply intertwined that their very existence becomes a single, shared story. From the story of perfect, selfless cooperation in the fig and its wasp, we now turn to a partnership that is far more cunning, a tale of trickery and illusion. The orchid family is renowned for its beauty and diversity, but it is also famous for its evolutionary genius, particularly its mastery of deception. Many orchids have evolved not to reward their pollinators, but to deceive them, using mimicry so convincing that the pollinator is tricked into performing its vital service for free. This is not a malicious act, but a brilliant and energy-efficient evolutionary strategy, a different kind of specialized relationship built on a beautiful lie. The most common form of this deception is known as sexual mimicry. Certain species of orchids have evolved to perfectly imitate the appearance, the texture, and even the specific scent of a female insect, most often a particular species of bee or wasp. The flower's petal, known as the labellum, may be shaped like the female's abdomen, complete with fuzzy hairs and iridescent patterns that mimic her wings. More incredibly, the orchid produces a chemical cocktail of pheromones that is an exact match for the unique scent the female insect uses to attract a mate. The unsuspecting male insect flying through the forest detects this powerful, irresistible scent on the air. He believes he has found a potential mate. He's drawn in by the combination of the visual cue, the shape and colour of the orchid, and the overwhelming olfactory signal. He lands on the labellum, convinced he's in the presence of a receptive female, and attempts to mate with the flower. This behaviour is called pseudocopulation. As the male insect moves his body against the flower, trying to mate with the decoy, he triggers a precise mechanism. The orchid has its pollen stored not as loose dust, but in two small sticky sacs called pollinia. These are positioned at the perfect spot to be attached to the insect's body during his misguided romantic efforts. The pollinia will be firmly glued to his head or his abdomen. After a few moments, the male insect, presumably confused but undeterred, gives up and flies away. He now carries the orchid's pollen, a strange and unexpected burden from his encounter. But the orchid's deception is not yet complete. The male will soon pick up the scent of another orchid of the same species, and driven by the same powerful instinct, he will fly towards it, believing he has found another chance to mate. He lands on the second flower and attempts to copulate once again. As he does so, the sticky pollinia he is carrying are perfectly positioned to be transferred to the receptive stigma of this new flower. Pollination is achieved. The orchid has successfully reproduced, all without having to spend any of its precious energy on producing nectar. The male insect, meanwhile, has been tricked twice, gaining nothing for his efforts except perhaps a bit of confusion. This strategy is a marvel of evolutionary precision, The orchid's mimicry must be nearly perfect. If it is not a convincing enough imitation of the female insect, the male will not be fooled. This has led to an incredible degree of specialization, with a specific orchid species often targeting a single specific species of insect pollinator. The relationship is a testament to the diverse and sometimes ruthless creativity of the natural world. It shows that the agreement between plant and pollinator is not always a straightforward transaction of food for service. Sometimes it is a captivating and one-sided affair, a beautiful deception that works so perfectly it has allowed the orchids to become one of the largest and most successful families of flowering plants on Earth. Beyond the deceptions of colour and scent, there exists another layer of specialisation, one that is mechanical and auditory. It is a secret handshake, a hidden frequency that unlocks a flower's most protected treasure. This fascinating process is known as buzz pollination, or sonication. It is a technique used by certain flowers to protect their pollen from generalist visitors, ensuring it is reserved only for the pollinators who know the secret code. This code is not a shape or a smell, but a specific vibration, a musical note that shakes the pollen free. Many of us are familiar with the flowers that employ this strategy, even if we are unaware of the secret they hold. Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants and blueberries all rely on buzz pollination for the most effective fertilization. Unlike most flowers that present their pollen openly on their anthers for any visitor to brush against, these plants hold their pollen inside long, thin anthers with only a tiny pore or slit at the very tip. The pollen is packed tightly inside like salt inside a salt shaker. A gentle breeze or the clumsy visit of a honeybee will do nothing. The pollen remains securely locked away. This is a clever evolutionary strategy. It prevents the flower's valuable pollen from being taken by pollen thieves, insects that might collect the protein-rich pollen for food without actually being effective at transferring it to another flower. The honeybee, for example, is a meticulous pollen collector, mixing it with nectar to pack into its pollen baskets. For a tomato flower, a visit from a honeybee often means losing its pollen with little chance of successful reproduction. So the flower has evolved this specialised lock. The key to this lock is held by bees of a different sort. Most famously, the bumblebees and various species of solitary native bees. These bees have learned the secret technique. When a bumblebee lands on a tomato flower, it grasps the base of the anthers firmly with its mandibles. Then it decouples its powerful flight muscles from its wings. Instead of flapping its wings, it contracts these muscles at an incredibly high frequency, causing its entire thorax to vibrate intensely. This vibration travels through its body into the flower, creating a loud, audible buzz, a specific musical note, often close to middle C. This intense vibration is the secret frequency. It resonates through the anther, and the force is so strong that it causes the tightly packed pollen inside to be ejected explosively from the tiny pore at the tip. For a moment, the bee is enveloped in a small cloud of golden pollen dust, which coats its fuzzy body. The secret handshake has been performed, and the treasure has been released. The bumblebee will then fly to another flower, still buzzing with the same frequency. As the pollen is shaken from its body, some of it will land on the stigma of the new flower, achieving pollination. This method is incredibly efficient and ensures a high rate of fruit set. In fact, in commercial greenhouses where tomatoes are grown, farmers will often bring in hives of bumblebees specifically to perform this essential service, as they are far more effective than any other type of pollinator for these particular crops. Buzz pollination is a beautiful example of a non-obvious specialization. It is a relationship based not on what a pollinator looks like, but on what it can do. It is a partnership built on a shared frequency, a secret vibration that turns the bee into a living tuning fork and the flower into a responsive instrument. It is a reminder that the language of nature is spoken not just in sight and smell, but also in sound and vibration, in hidden energies that connect the world in wonderfully complex and surprising ways. Having explored the intricate specialized relationships between individual flowers and their messengers, we now gently zoom our perspective out. We will move from the single thread of connection to see how these countless small interactions weave together the very fabric of our world's largest ecosystems. Let us wander into the deep, quiet world of the forest and see how pollination is the thread that holds this complex, multi-layered community together. To understand how a tiny bee or a humble moth can hold together something as vast and complex as a forest, we must first understand a beautiful ecological concept known as a keystone species. The metaphor comes from architecture. In a stone archway, there is one central wedge-shaped stone at the very top, the keystone. All the other stones lean upon it. If you were to remove that single keystone, the entire arch, which had seemed so strong and permanent, would collapse. In an ecosystem, a keystone species plays a similar role. It is a species whose presence and activities have a disproportionately large effect on its environment relative to its abundance. Though it may not be the most numerous or the largest organism, its removal would cause a cascade of changes, fundamentally altering the structure and integrity of the whole system. Many pollinators, in the quiet performance of their daily work, are the keystones of their ecosystems. A pollinator acts as a living bridge, a vital point of connection. It links the reproductive success of plants to the food supply of countless other animals. Its role is not just about making more flowers, it is about creating the very foundation of the food web. The work of a pollinator is what turns a flower into a fruit, a nut, or a seed. These are not just reproductive vessels for the plant. They're concentrated packets of energy, the currency that fuels the entire forest economy. Consider a population of native bees in a temperate forest. In the spring, they pollinate the blossoms of wild cherry and blueberry bushes. In the summer, they move to blackberry brambles and other flowering shrubs. By performing this service, they are not just ensuring the continuation of these plants, they are creating the very food that will sustain other animals throughout the year. The blueberries and cherries they help create will be eaten by songbirds, by black bears, and by small mammals like chipmunks and mice. The blackberries will feed raccoons, foxes, and countless migrating birds getting ready for their autumn journey. The bees themselves, in their larval and adult stages, also become food for other creatures, like spiders, birds, and dragonflies. If you were to remove these native bees, the keystone, the arch would begin to crumble. The blueberry and blackberry bushes might still produce a few fruits from wind or self-pollination, but their harvest would be dramatically reduced. The songbirds and the bears would find less food, leading to lower reproductive success and potentially smaller populations. The small mammals would have fewer resources to get them through the winter. The predators that feed on those mammals would, in turn, feel the effects. The entire system, which seemed so robust, is revealed to be profoundly dependent on the quiet, unassuming work of this single group of insects. This effect is even more pronounced in tropical rainforests, where the interconnectedness is even more complex. Here, a single species of bat might be the keystone pollinator for a tree that produces a fruit that is the primary food source for a species of monkey, which in turn is a food source for a predator. The bat, through its pollination service, is directly supporting the entire chain. The keystone pollinator, therefore, is a powerful force for stability and diversity. It is the bridge that allows the energy captured by plants from the sun to flow out into the rest of the ecosystem. Its seemingly small, repetitive action, moving from flower to flower, is magnified through the intricate web of life, creating ripples of consequence that touch every inhabitant of the forest. Understanding this concept allows us to see the forest not as a collection of individual trees, but as a single, deeply interconnected community, held together by the tireless work of its smallest and most vital members. With the concept of the keystone firmly in our minds, Let us now follow the very first ripple that spreads out from a single act of pollination. This is the immediate, tangible, and almost magical transformation that occurs within the plant itself. It is the journey from the ephemeral beauty of a flower to the nourishing substance of a fruit. This process, the creation of fruits, nuts, and seeds, is the first and most fundamental way that a pollinator's work builds the foundation of the entire forest food web. The flower, for all its beauty, is a temporary thing. It is a fleeting advertisement, a brief and hopeful gesture made by the plant. Its sole purpose is to attract a pollinator and to achieve fertilization. Once that single grain of pollen has been delivered and has successfully fertilized the ovule deep within the flower's ovary, the flower's job is done. The vibrant petals, having served their purpose, will wither and fall away. The production of fragrance and nectar will cease. The plant now redirects all of its energy from outward attraction to inward creation. This is where the transformation begins. The fertilized ovary, the very heart of the flower, begins to swell and change. It is now on a new path, a journey of maturation. The cells divide and multiply, drawing water and nutrients from the parent plant. This growing structure is the birth of the fruit. The fruit is, in essence, the plant's clever and often delicious packaging for its most precious cargo, the seeds. Inside this developing fruit, the fertilized ovules are undergoing their own transformation into seeds. Each seed contains a tiny, dormant plant embryo and a supply of food, the endosperm, all wrapped in a protective coat. It is a complete, self-contained life support system, a promise of the next generation waiting for the right conditions to awaken. The fruit that surrounds these seeds serves two primary purposes, and both are essential for the plant's survival. First, it protects the developing seeds from harm, shielding them from insects, disease, and the elements as they mature. Second, and perhaps more importantly, the fruit is a vehicle for dispersal. A plant is rooted in one spot. It cannot walk to a new, less crowded location to plant its offspring. It must rely on another messenger, another partner, to carry its seeds away. And it attracts this second messenger in the same way it attracted the first, by offering a reward. As the fruit ripens, it undergoes a chemical change. Starches are converted into sugars, making it sweet and energy-rich. The colour changes, often from a camouflage green to a vibrant red, yellow or blue, a clear visual signal that it is ready to be eaten. The texture softens, and it develops an attractive aroma. All of these changes are an invitation to the next set of animals in the forest, the fruit eaters or frugivores. This transformation from flower to fruit is the first critical link in the chain of energy transfer. The pollinator's visit is the catalyst, the spark that initiates the process. Without that spark, the flower would simply fade, and no fruit would form. The branch would remain bare. But with that single successful touch, the plant is able to convert sunlight, water, and soil nutrients into a dense, portable, and highly attractive packet of energy. These packets of energy, the berries, nuts, acorns, and pods, will become the foundational layer of the forest's pantry, the sustenance upon which so many other lives depend. This first, quiet ripple is the pollinator's most immediate and profound gift to the wider world. The first ripple, the transformation of a flower into a fruit, has now stocked the forest pantry. The branches are heavy with berries, the ground is scattered with nuts, and the air is filled with the sweet scent of ripening abundance. Now, we can watch as the second ripple spreads, as the energy so carefully packaged by the plant is passed on, feeding the diverse community of forest dwellers. This is where the pollinator's work truly begins to sustain the intricate web of life, connecting the plant kingdom to the vast and varied animal kingdom. The invitation sent out by the ripe fruit is answered by a host of different creatures, each adapted to take advantage of this seasonal bounty. In the canopy, Songbirds like robins, cedar waxwings and tanagers flock to the branches, feasting on the colourful berries. Their excellent colour vision allows them to spot the ripe fruits from a distance. By eating the fruit, they are not only gaining vital sustenance, particularly in late summer as they prepare for migration, but they are also performing the plant's next essential service, seed dispersal. They will fly off and later excrete the hard, indigestible seeds far from the parent plant, complete with a small amount of fertilizer, giving the next generation a chance to grow in a new location. On the forest floor, a different set of diners arrives. Small mammals like chipmunks and squirrels work tirelessly to gather acorns, hickory nuts, and beech nuts. These nuts, the result of the wind's pollination work in the spring, are rich in fats and proteins, a perfect food for storing for the winter. The squirrel's famous habit of burying nuts and forgetting where some of them are is a crucial part of the forest's regeneration. Each forgotten acorn is a planted oak tree, a future giant of the forest sown by the unintentional gardening of a busy rodent. Larger mammals also depend on this pollinated harvest. The black bear, an omnivore, will spend much of the late summer and autumn gorging on berries and nuts to build up the fat reserves it needs to survive its winter hibernation. A good berry crop, made possible by a healthy population of native bees, can be the difference between a healthy bear population and one that is struggling. Deer, too, will browse on fallen fruits and acorns, supplementing their diet of leaves and twigs. Even insects themselves benefit from the fruits of pollination. A fallen apple, slowly fermenting on the forest floor, will attract a host of flies, beetles, and wasps who feed on its sweet, decaying flesh. The cycle of energy continues to flow, moving from the large and obvious to the small and unseen. This second ripple demonstrates that the pollinator's work has a profound cascading effect. The flight of a single bee in May can lead to the survival of a chickadee through a cold December. The flutter of a butterfly's wings can contribute to the growth of a mighty oak tree that will stand for centuries. The connections are deep, intricate, and often separated by time. Without the pollinator, this entire system would falter. The forest pantry would be nearly empty. The birds would have less to eat, the squirrels fewer nuts to bury, the bears a harder time preparing for winter. The forest would become a quieter, less vibrant, and less resilient place. This second ripple, this act of feeding the forest's inhabitants, reveals the true power of the pollinator. They are not just gardeners for the plants, they are the caterers for the entire animal community. The quiet, unassuming agents who ensure that the forest's great communal feast can continue season after season. The ripples of a pollinator's work extend beyond the food web, shaping the very physical structure of the forest itself. A forest is not a single, uniform entity. It is a multi-layered world, a vertical landscape with distinct communities of life at each level. At the top is the canopy, the high, sun-drenched world of the tallest trees. Far below is the understory, a place of deep shade and quiet growth. Pollinators are the architects who ensure the health and regeneration of both of these layers, maintaining the complex three-dimensional world of the forest. The canopy is where the great giants of the forest live, the oaks, maples, hickories, and, in tropical regions, the massive emergent trees that break through the main layer. The life of the canopy is a world away from the forest floor. It is a place of bright sunlight, wind, and open space. The pollination of these titans is often a story of two different strategies. Many of the most common temperate forest trees, like the oaks and hickories, are wind-pollinated. As we have seen, they release vast clouds of pollen in the spring, letting the moving air do the work of fertilization. This results in the great mast years, the periodic production of enormous crops of acorns and nuts that feed so much of the forest life. However, many other canopy trees produce beautiful showy flowers and rely entirely on animal pollinators. The tulip poplar, the black cherry, and the basswood tree all depend on bees and other flying insects. For these trees, attracting a pollinator high up in the air presents a unique challenge. They often produce large clusters of flowers or exceptionally fragrant blossoms to send a clear signal that can be detected from a distance. The bees and other insects that work this high-altitude garden are essential for the survival of these species, ensuring that the forest roof is constantly being renewed. Without them, gaps would begin to appear in the canopy, fundamentally changing the nature of the entire forest. Beneath this high canopy lies the understory, a world defined by shade. Here, smaller trees like the dogwood and redbud, as well as countless species of shrubs and wildflowers, have adapted to a life of lower light. Their pollination story is often more intimate. They flower in the early spring before the leaves of the great trees above have fully emerged, taking advantage of a brief window of direct sunlight. This is when the forest floor can be carpeted with the ephemeral beauty of spring wildflowers like trillium, spring beauty, and Dutchman's breeches. These understory plants are a critical early-season food source for the first emerging pollinators, especially queen bumblebees who need to build up their energy to start a new colony. The relationship is one of perfect timing and mutual dependence. The flowers provide the essential fuel that kickstarts the pollinator communities for the year, and the pollinators provide the service that allows these shade-loving plants to reproduce. Many of these wildflowers have fascinating relationships with ants. After pollination, they produce seeds with a small, fatty appendage called an elaiosome. Ants are attracted to this food body, and they will carry the entire seed back to their underground nest. They consume the elaiosome and discard the seed in their nutrient-rich waste tunnels, effectively planting the seed in a perfect protected location. The pollinators' work, therefore, builds the forest from the top down and the bottom up. They ensure the regeneration of the mighty trees that create the canopy, and they sustain the delicate, shade-tolerant plants that form the rich tapestry of the understory. Each layer depends on a different set of relationships, a different cast of pollinator characters. Together, they create the structural complexity, the vibrant, multi-layered architecture that defines a healthy forest ecosystem. This intricate structure in turn provides a vast array of niches and habitats for all the other creatures who call the forest home. We have followed the pollinator's influence from the flower to the fruit, from the food web to the very structure of the forest. Now, for our final ripple, we must look down to the dark, rich earth beneath our feet. The work of pollination, which begins so high in the sunlit air, ultimately pays a quiet and profound debt to the soil itself. The life that pollinators create in the canopy and the understory eventually returns to the forest floor, enriching the soil and ensuring that the entire cycle of life can begin again. This connection happens in several beautiful cyclical ways. First, consider the massive amount of organic matter that is created as a direct result of pollination. The fruits, nuts, and seeds that are not eaten by animals will eventually fall to the ground. A berry shrivels and drops from its branch. An acorn, unburied by a squirrel, rests on the leaf litter. These uneaten fruits are not a waste. They are a direct contribution to the soil's pantry. Decomposers, a vast and tireless community of bacteria, fungi, millipedes, and earthworms, go to work. They break down the sugars, proteins, and fats in the fallen fruit, returning these valuable nutrients to the soil in a form that plant roots can absorb. The energy that a flower invested in its fruit, an investment made possible by a pollinator, is thus recycled, becoming the building block for future growth. The animals that are fed by the pollinated harvest also play a crucial role in this cycle. The waste they excrete, rich in nitrogen and other essential nutrients, acts as a natural fertilizer, distributing fertility throughout the forest. A bird that feasts on berries in one part of the forest may deposit its droppings miles away, moving nutrients across the landscape. The body of every creature, from the smallest mouse to the largest bear, will eventually return to the earth upon its death. The nutrients that were once part of a blueberry, that became part of the bear, are then released back into the soil by the tireless work of the decomposers. Furthermore, the activity of the animals themselves helps to enrich the soil. A squirrel digging to bury an acorn aerates the earth. An earthworm, drawn to the richness of a decaying apple, tunnels through the ground, improving its structure and water retention. The entire community of life that is supported by the pollinators' work is constantly tilling, mixing, and fertilizing the forest floor. This final ripple closes the loop, beautifully demonstrating the cyclical nature of a healthy ecosystem. The soil provides the nutrients for the plant to grow and produce a flower. The flower attracts a pollinator which allows the plant to create a fruit. The fruit feeds an animal which lives its life and eventually returns its body and its waste to the soil. The decomposers then break it all down, releasing the nutrients to be taken up by the plant once more. The pollinator is the essential, irreplaceable link in the middle of this chain. It is the bridge between the flower and the fruit, the catalyst that allows the entire cycle of life, death, and nutrient renewal to proceed. Without the pollinator, the flow of energy from the plant to the animal community would be dramatically reduced, and consequently, the return of nutrients to the soil would slow, leading to a poorer, less fertile, and less resilient ecosystem over time. The soil's quiet debt to the pollinator is repaid every time a fallen fruit enriches the earth, ensuring the forest's enduring vitality from its roots to its highest leaves. Having wandered through the wild fabric of the forest, we now bring our journey closer to home, into our own cultivated fields and gardens. This chapter explores the profound and deeply personal connection between pollinators and the human food supply. Let us look upon the food we eat as a form of stored sunlight, made accessible to us through the quiet, tireless work of these essential creatures. Let us begin with a simple, quiet act, imagining the food upon our plate. Perhaps it is a colourful salad, a slice of apple pie, or a simple bowl of berries. We often think of this food in terms of its origin, the farm, the orchard, the garden. But if we look deeper, we can trace its story back even further, to a single crucial moment of connection, a tiny act of pollination that made it all possible. There is a direct, unbroken line from the flight of a bee to the food that sustains us, a link that connects our plate to the health of the entire planet. Scientists and agricultural experts have a simple and powerful way of stating this connection. They estimate that approximately 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat is made possible by the work of animal pollinators. This is a staggering thought. It means that a full third of our diet, a third of the variety, the flavour and the nutrition that we depend on, is a direct gift from bees, butterflies, moths, bats, flies, and other creatures. Without their services, our food system as we know it would be fundamentally and irrevocably changed. The crops that rely on these pollinators are not the staple grains that provide the bulk of the world's calories, the wind-pollinated wheat, rice, and corn. Instead, they are the foods that add colour, vitality, and essential nutrients to our diet. They are the fruits, the vegetables, the nuts, and the seeds that are the cornerstones of healthy eating. More than 75% of the world's most important food crops benefit from animal pollination in some way. This includes most of the world's supply of fruits, from apples and cherries to mangoes and watermelons. It includes vegetables like squash, cucumbers, and avocados. It includes the vast majority of nuts, like almonds, and the seeds we use for oil, like canola and sunflower. This dependence connects our personal well-being directly to the well-being of pollinator populations. The health of a wild bee population in a distant meadow is not an abstract ecological concern. It has a direct impact on the availability and affordability of the blueberries we put in our morning cereal. The survival of nectar-feeding bats in Mexico is directly linked to the health of the agave plants that give us tequila. The tiny, unassuming midge in a rainforest understory is the secret ingredient in the chocolate bar we enjoy as a treat. This connection between our plate and the planet reveals our own place within the intricate web of life. We are not separate from it. We're active and deeply dependent participants. The choices we make in our agriculture and our land use have a direct impact on the creatures that provide this essential service. The health of our pollinators is a direct reflection of the health of our environment. When they struggle, it is a sign that the entire system, including our food supply, is under stress. So, the next time you sit down to a meal, take a moment for this quiet reflection. Look at the slices of apple, the scoop of guacamole, the handful of almonds. See them not just as food, but as the final chapter in a story that began with a flower and a pollinator. See them as a testament to a beautiful ancient partnership, a quiet agreement that is renewed every day in fields and orchards all around the world. In that single bite, you are tasting the sweetness of a flower, the energy of the sun, and the indispensable work of a tiny, winged messenger. It is a humble and profound connection that ties our daily sustenance to the very pulse of the planet. From the general truth of our dependence, let us wander now into a specific and serene landscape where this partnership is on beautiful display, the orchard in spring. There are few sights more hopeful and breathtaking than an apple, pear, or cherry orchard in full bloom. It is a world transformed, a sea of white and pink petals under a gentle blue sky. This blizzard of petals, as it is often called, is more than just a beautiful spectacle. It is a promise. It is the orchard's single, glorious opportunity to secure the harvest of the coming autumn, and it is a promise that can only be fulfilled with the help of a legion of tiny winged partners. An orchard in bloom is a study in attraction. The sheer density of flowers creates an overwhelming sensory signal. The visual cue is a vast blanket of colour, visible to flying insects from miles away. The olfactory cue is a cloud of sweet, delicate fragrance that drifts on the spring breeze, and the reward is an immense temporary feast, millions upon millions of individual flowers, each offering a small sip of nectar and a dusting of protein-rich pollen. For a bee colony emerging from the long lean months of winter, a blossoming orchard is a paradise, a sudden and welcome explosion of resources. The trees in an orchard have a challenge. Most varieties of apples, pears and cherries are not self-fertile. This means that for a flower to become a fruit, it must receive pollen from a flower of a different variety of the same fruit. An apple tree cannot pollinate itself. It needs a genetic message from a neighbour. This makes the role of the pollinator absolutely critical. A bee is needed to act as the bridge, to carry the pollen from a Granny Smith to a Red Delicious, or from one variety of cherry to another. Without this act of cross-pollination, the blossoms would simply fade and fall, and no fruit would form. This is why orchardists and beekeepers have formed their own kind of partnership. Many farmers will bring managed hives of honeybees into their orchards, specifically during the short, critical window when the trees are in bloom. The hives are placed strategically throughout the orchard, and as the bees emerge into the spring sunshine, they are greeted by a world of blossoms. They go to work immediately, moving systematically from flower to flower, from tree to tree, their fuzzy bodies becoming perfect vehicles for transferring pollen. But it is not just the managed honeybees who are at work. The orchard is also a haven for a host of native wild pollinators. Solitary mason bees, bumblebees, and various species of flies and hoverflies are all drawn to the feast. These native pollinators are often even more efficient than honeybees on a per-visit basis. A bumblebee, with its large fuzzy body, can carry a huge amount of pollen, and its ability to fly in cooler, windier weather means it can work on days when honeybees might stay in the hive. The diversity of pollinators is the orchard's insurance policy, ensuring that the work gets done even if conditions are not perfect. As the bees work, the orchard is filled with a gentle meditative hum, the sound of millions of tiny acts of connection. Each visit, each transfer of a pollen grain, is a small investment in the future. It is the quiet, diligent work of a few weeks in spring that will, over the course of the long summer, transform these delicate flowers into the crisp, sweet, and heavy fruits of the autumn harvest. The vibrant colour of the orchard in bloom is a fleeting beauty, but it is a beauty with a profound purpose, a silent, fragrant promise of the nourishment to come. From the grand, sweeping scale of the orchard, let us now shrink our focus to a more intimate and familiar space, the quiet rows of the vegetable patch. Here, in our own backyards or on small market farms, another chapter of the pollinator story unfolds, one that brings the familiar shapes and tastes of summer to our tables. The vitality of the vegetable garden, its ability to produce the squashes, cucumbers and berries we so enjoy, is deeply connected to the health and diversity of our local pollinator communities. Many of the most beloved summer vegetables belong to the gourd family, or cucurbits. This includes zucchini, summer squash, pumpkins, melons, and cucumbers. These plants have a particular reproductive strategy. They produce separate male and female flowers on the same plant. The male flowers produce the pollen, and the female flowers, which can be identified by the tiny swollen ovary at their base that looks like a miniature version of the fruit, are the ones that will develop into the vegetable. For this to happen, a pollinator must physically move the pollen from a male flower to a female flower. This work is done primarily by bees. The large, bright yellow, open-faced flowers of a squash plant are a particularly attractive and welcoming signal to bees of all kinds. Honeybees will certainly visit them, but the true specialists of the squash patch are the native squash bees. These solitary bees have co-evolved with squash plants. The female squash bee will dig a small nest in the ground, often right at the base of the plant she's pollinating. The males will often sleep inside the closed blossoms of the squash flowers at night. Their entire life cycle is intimately tied to these plants, and they are incredibly efficient and dedicated pollinators. Other garden staples rely on different bee behaviours. We have already learned about buzz pollination, the secret vibration needed to release pollen from plants like tomatoes and eggplants. While these plants can be pollinated by the wind to some degree, the fruit they produce is much larger and more plentiful when they are visited by a bee that knows the trick, like a bumblebee. The loud, audible buzz of a bumblebee on a tomato blossom is the sound of a successful harvest in the making. The sweet treats of the garden, the strawberries and raspberries, also depend heavily on pollinators. The flowers of these berry plants need to be thoroughly and evenly pollinated to produce a perfectly formed fruit. An incompletely pollinated strawberry blossom will result in a small misshapen berry. A bee, moving around the centre of the flower, ensures that pollen is delivered to all the right places, resulting in the large, juicy and symmetrical berries we love. The vegetable patch is a living laboratory where we can witness the importance of pollinator diversity firsthand. The honeybee, the bumblebee, the squash bee, the tiny sweat bee. Each has its own preferences, its own style, and its own unique contribution to make. A garden that is rich in a variety of pollinators will be more resilient and more productive. It is a quiet reminder that the vitality of our own small patch of earth is directly linked to the health of the wild and varied community of creatures that we share it with. The gifts of pollinators are not limited to the solid foods on our plates. Their quiet, often unseen work also contributes to some of the most common and cherished beverages that we enjoy every day, and even the very clothes we wear. From the ritual of our morning coffee to the soft feel of a cotton shirt, the story of pollination is subtly present, a hidden helper adding a layer of quiet wonder to our daily lives. Let us begin with one of the world's most popular beverages, coffee. The coffee plant, a shrub that grows in the mountainous tropical regions of the world, produces beautiful, fragrant white blossoms. While many modern, cultivated varieties of coffee are capable of self-pollination, studies have shown that when these flowers are visited by bees, the resulting coffee beans are more numerous, larger, and of a higher quality. The bees' work significantly boosts the yield and the value of the crop. The best coffee is often shade-grown, cultivated under the canopy of native rainforest trees. This method creates a healthier, more complex ecosystem, which supports a thriving population of wild native bees. These bees, living in the surrounding forest, provide their pollination services for free. The rich, complex flavour in a cup of shade-grown coffee is, in part, a taste of the rainforest and the work of its native pollinators. Now, let us travel to the arid landscapes of Mexico, to the fields of blue agave. As we have learned, the agave plant relies on a nocturnal specialist, the lesser long-nosed bat, for its pollination. Traditional producers of tequila and mezcal understood this relationship, allowing a portion of their plants to flower to feed the bats and ensure the genetic diversity of the wild agave. Today, there is a growing movement to return to more bat-friendly practices, recognizing that the health of this vital hidden helper is linked to the long-term health of this important cultural and economic plant. Beyond what we consume, pollinators are woven quite literally into the fabric of our lives through cotton. The soft fibres of the cotton plant are a staple of the global textile industry. The cotton plant produces large, beautiful flowers that, while capable of some self-pollination, produce a significantly higher yield of higher quality fibres when they are cross-pollinated by insects, primarily bees. Bees are drawn to the large nectar-rich blossoms, and as they move from flower to flower, they perform the vital service that leads to the production of the cotton boll, the fluffy capsule that contains the precious fibres. When you pull on a soft cotton t-shirt, you are, in a very real sense, wearing the work of a bee. Finally, the future of our agriculture depends on pollinators. Many of the crops grown for animal feed, like alfalfa and clover, require bee pollination, and the vegetables we eat, like carrots, onions, and broccoli, must be allowed to flower and be pollinated in order to produce the seeds that farmers will plant the following year. This essential link in our agricultural chain is almost entirely dependent on insect pollination. These hidden helpers are the quiet, unassuming partners in our global economy, a reminder that every sip and every touch can connect us to a wild and fascinating ecological story. We have explored the pollinators' gifts in terms of food, fabric and flavour. Now let us gently consider their contribution through one final lens: the quiet but immense economic value of their work. While it can feel strange to put a price tag on a natural process, understanding the economics of a bee's flight allows us to appreciate this service not as something quaint or decorative, but as a foundational pillar of the global economy. The work that pollinators do, tirelessly and for free, represents one of the most valuable and irreplaceable services that nature provides to human society. Economists have tried to quantify this contribution, and the numbers are staggering. Globally, the value of the crops that are directly dependent on animal pollinators is estimated to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars every single year. In the United States alone, insect pollination contributes tens of billions of dollars to the economy annually. This value is not an abstract calculation. It is real money that supports the livelihoods of farmers, distributors, retailers, and everyone involved in the vast and complex system of bringing food from the field to our tables. Let us break this down in a more tangible way. Consider a single almond orchard in California. The almond industry is almost entirely dependent on honeybees for pollination. Each year, a massive migration takes place, as the majority of the managed honeybee hives in the United States are transported to California, specifically for the almond bloom. The farmers pay the beekeepers for the rental of these hives. This is a direct transactional recognition of the bee's economic value. Without this paid service, the almond industry, worth billions of dollars, would collapse. But the value extends far beyond these direct payments. The service provided by the bee improves not just the quantity of the harvest, but also its quality. A more thoroughly pollinated blossom often leads to a larger, better shaped and more flavourful fruit. This higher quality product can be sold at a higher price, increasing the farmer's income and providing a better product for the consumer. This boost in quality is another layer of economic value, a quiet bonus provided by the diligent work of the bee. Even more significant is the contribution of wild, native pollinators. Unlike the managed honeybees whose services are rented, these native bees, flies, beetles and birds provide their pollination services entirely for free. They are a natural subsidy, a public good that quietly supports our agricultural systems. A farm that is surrounded by healthy, natural habitat will benefit from a diverse community of wild pollinators who will visit their crops, increasing their yield and resilience, all without costing the farmer a single penny. The economic value of maintaining these natural habitats, therefore, is immense. It is an investment in a free and highly effective workforce. Thinking in these economic terms helps to frame the challenges facing pollinators in a new light. The loss of pollinator populations is not just an ecological tragedy. It is a direct and profound economic threat. It is the erosion of a vital natural capital, a service that, if we were forced to replicate it ourselves by hand, would be prohibitively expensive and logistically impossible on a global scale. The quiet flight of a single bee, when multiplied by the trillions of flights that happen every day, becomes a powerful economic engine, a silent, efficient and beautiful force that helps to sustain our societies and nourish our world. Having appreciated the immense value and beauty of the pollinators' work, we must now turn our attention, with a gentle and reflective spirit, to the challenges they face. This chapter is not meant to create anxiety, but to foster a deeper understanding of the delicate balance of our world. By looking softly at the stresses on these vital creatures, we can cultivate a quiet reverence for the interconnectedness of all things. The story of the pollinators is an ancient one, a tale of resilience and adaptation that has unfolded over millions of years. But in the last century, a new and troubling chapter has begun. It is not a story of a sudden, dramatic catastrophe, but of a slow, quiet fading. It is like listening to a beautiful symphony and gradually realizing that some of the instruments are growing fainter, their notes becoming harder to hear. This silent fading of pollinator populations around the world is a sign that the delicate balance of our ecosystems is being disturbed, a quiet alarm that calls not for panic, but for gentle attention and understanding. This decline is not uniform. It affects different species in different places in different ways. For some, like the managed honeybee, the challenges come in the form of new diseases and parasites, the stress of being transported across the country for agricultural pollination and exposure to pesticides. Beekeepers have reported alarmingly high rates of colony loss, a troubling trend for an insect so vital to our food systems. For many wild pollinators, the story is even more subtle and harder to read. The vast majority of our native bees are solitary creatures. They do not live in large, easily monitored hives. They live quiet lives, nesting in hollow stems or tunnels in the ground. Their fading is not marked by empty bee boxes, but by a slower, less noticeable change in our landscapes. It is the meadow that is a little less vibrant than it was a generation ago, the garden that has fewer types of wild bees visiting its blossoms. Scientists are working tirelessly to track these changes, and the evidence they're gathering points to significant declines in the populations of many species, including some of the most common and important bumblebees. The monarch butterfly, the hero of our story of migration, has also experienced a dramatic decline. The number of monarchs arriving at their wintering grounds in Mexico has fallen precipitously in recent decades. Their fading is a complex story with multiple causes, from the loss of milkweed, the only plant their caterpillars can eat, in their breeding grounds, to deforestation in their wintering habitat, and the challenges of extreme weather along their migratory route. This silent fading is not due to a single, simple cause. It is the result of a complex combination of pressures, a death by 1,000 cuts. It is a symphony of interacting challenges that together are making the world a harder place for these creatures to thrive. Each of these pressures is like a thread being pulled from a beautiful, intricate tapestry. One pulled thread may not be noticed, but as more and more are removed, the image begins to unravel, and the integrity of the whole fabric is threatened. To speak of this fading is not to tell a story of hopelessness. It is instead an invitation to listen more closely. It is a call to pay attention to the gentle hum of the world, to notice the small winged messengers that share our planet, and to appreciate the profound and delicate work they do. By understanding the quiet, gradual nature of their disappearance, we can begin to understand the subtle but powerful ways in which our world is changing. It is in this quiet, gentle awareness that the seeds of care and stewardship can begin to grow, not from a place of fear, but from a place of deep respect and quiet reverence for a world held in such a delicate balance. One of the primary reasons for the silent fading of our pollinators is a slow, quiet change in the very shape of the land itself. For millions of years, the world was a vast, unbroken tapestry of forests, grasslands, and wetlands. A pollinator could travel for miles across a continuous landscape of food and shelter. But in our modern world, this beautiful tapestry is being cut into smaller and smaller pieces, a process known as habitat loss and fragmentation. This creation of patchwork fields presents a profound challenge for pollinators, making it harder for them to find food, to build their homes, and to move through their world. Habitat loss is the most direct threat. When a wildflower meadow is ploughed to make way for a housing development, or a forest is cleared for agriculture, the homes and food sources for an entire community of pollinators are simply erased. For the creatures that lived there, it is as if their entire world has vanished overnight. They must either try to move to a new area, where they may face new competition and challenges, or they will perish. Just as challenging, however, is the process of fragmentation. This is what happens when a large, continuous habitat is not completely destroyed, but is broken up into smaller, isolated islands. A new highway cutting through a forest, a shopping mall built in the middle of a prairie, or a vast monoculture farm that replaces a diverse landscape. All of these create barriers. The world becomes a patchwork quilt, a series of small, disconnected squares of nature separated by vast, inhospitable oceans of human development. For a pollinator, navigating this patchwork world is incredibly difficult. Imagine a solitary bee that needs to find a specific type of wildflower for her offspring. In a continuous meadow, this might be a short and easy flight, but in a fragmented landscape, that same patch of flowers might now be on the other side of a 6-lane highway or a huge field of corn where no flowers grow. The journey becomes longer, more perilous, and sometimes impossible. These barriers isolate pollinator populations, preventing them from mixing and sharing their genetic material. Over time, these small, isolated populations can become inbred and less resilient to disease or environmental changes. This fragmentation also affects the diversity of the pollinator community. Larger, more mobile pollinators, like some bumblebees or butterflies, might be able to travel between the patches, but smaller, more specialised bees, the ones that may only travel a few hundred feet from their nest, can become trapped in a single patch. If their specific food source disappears from that patch, they have nowhere else to go. The result is that fragmented habitats often have fewer species of pollinators than larger connected ones. The intricate symphony of the pollinator community loses some of its players, becoming a simpler, less resilient tune. The image of the patchwork field is a powerful one because it shows how our actions can have unintended, far-reaching consequences. We may not intend to harm the pollinators, but by changing the very geography of their world, we're making their lives infinitely more difficult. We are, in essence, fraying the edges of their beautiful tapestry, making it harder for them to weave the threads of connection that hold the entire ecosystem together. In the fragmented patchwork world we have created, our pollinators face another, more insidious challenge. It is an invisible force, a change in the very quality of the air and the land. We can think of this challenge as a scentless wind, a quiet and pervasive presence of chemicals in the environment that can confuse, harm, and disorient the creatures that rely so heavily on a clean and predictable world. This scentless wind is a metaphor for the widespread use of pesticides and the pervasive effects of pollution, which act like a fog, obscuring the pathways and signals that pollinators have relied upon for millions of years. Pesticides, which include insecticides designed to kill insects and herbicides designed to kill weeds, are one of the most direct threats. While they are often targeted at specific pest species that damage crops, they can be indiscriminate in their effects. Broad-spectrum insecticides can be lethal, not only to the intended pest, but also to the beneficial pollinators that visit the same fields. A bee may visit a crop that has been recently sprayed, and it may die immediately, or it may carry the contaminated pollen or nectar back to its hive, where it can harm the developing young and even the queen. Even at levels that are not immediately lethal, these chemicals can have subtle but devastating effects. They can impair a bee's ability to navigate, making it harder for her to find her way back to the hive. They can damage her memory, making her less efficient at foraging and communicating the location of food through the waggle dance. They can suppress her immune system, making her more vulnerable to the diseases and parasites that are a natural part of her world. The bee is not killed outright, but she is weakened, confused, and less able to perform the vital work of her life. Herbicides, while not designed to kill insects directly, also play a role. The widespread use of herbicides can eliminate the very wildflowers that grow in and around agricultural fields. These weeds, from the farmer's perspective, are often a critical source of food for native pollinators, especially during times when the main crop is not in bloom. The removal of this floral diversity creates what is known as a food desert, a vast landscape where pollinators can find nothing to eat. Beyond the fields, the general pollution of our air and water adds another layer to this scentless wind. Air pollution from cars and industry can actually break down the scent molecules that flowers release into the air. This means that the fragrant signal from a flower does not travel as far as it should. A moth flying at night may not be able to detect the scent of a flower that is just a short distance away, because the message has been scrambled and degraded by pollutants in the air. The lines of communication are being cut, making the quiet conversation between flower and pollinator harder and harder to hear. This scentless wind is a profound disruption, a quiet and constant stressor that makes the already difficult task of survival even harder for the delicate creatures that hold our world in balance. The final great challenge facing our pollinators is perhaps the most subtle, pervasive, and difficult to grasp. It is a slow, global change in the very rhythm of the seasons, a gradual warming of our planet that can be felt as a subtle fever in the garden. Climate change is not just about a world that is getting hotter. It is about a world that is becoming less predictable. For pollinators and plants whose lives are exquisitely synchronized to the turning of the seasons, this loss of predictability can create a dangerous and life-threatening mismatch in their ancient dance. For millions of years, plants and pollinators have co-evolved to be in perfect sync. The emergence of a queen bumblebee from her winter slumber is timed to coincide with the blooming of the first spring wildflowers. The migration of a hummingbird is timed to follow the wave of blooming flowers along its route. This temporal synchrony is a cornerstone of their shared survival. The pollinator is guaranteed a food source upon its arrival, and the plant is guaranteed a partner for its reproduction. But the warming climate is beginning to unravel this beautiful timing. As winters become milder and springs arrive earlier, many plants are responding to these temperature cues by flowering sooner than they have in the past. Flowers that once bloomed in mid-May may now be blooming in late April. This might seem like a small change, but for a pollinator, it can be catastrophic. Many insects, however, do not time their emergence based on temperature alone. Their life cycles are often regulated by other cues, like the changing length of the day. Day length, unlike temperature, is not affected by climate change. The spring equinox will always fall on the same date. So, while the plant may be responding to the early warmth and flowering ahead of schedule, the The pollinator, still waiting for its day-length cue, may emerge from its hibernation or migration at the traditional time. When it finally arrives, it finds that it has missed the party. The flowers it depends on have already bloomed and faded. The feast is over. This is known as a phenological mismatch, a temporal disjoint between two closely linked life cycle events. The pollinator arrives to find an empty pantry, which can lead to starvation and a failure to reproduce. At the same time, the plant has missed its window of opportunity. It flowered, but its dedicated partner was not there to move its pollen. It fails to set seed, unable to create the next generation. Both partners in this ancient relationship suffer. This fever in the garden also brings with it more extreme and unpredictable weather events. A late spring frost can kill the blossoms that have been tricked into opening early. A prolonged drought can cause plants to wither, producing less nectar. A more intense hurricane season can disrupt the migratory path of butterflies and birds. The stable, predictable rhythms of the seasons, the metronome that has guided the lives of these creatures for eons, are becoming erratic and unreliable. This challenge is a profound one because it rewrites the fundamental rules of the game. It changes the very calendar that life has been following for millennia. The fever in the garden is a quiet background stress that affects everything, creating a world of uncertainty for the plants and pollinators whose survival depends on the perfect, predictable timing of their beautiful shared dance. It is a sombre note, but one that leads not to despair, but to a deeper appreciation for the resilience of the wild. Having looked with gentle honesty at the immense challenges facing our pollinators, it is easy to feel a sense of melancholy, a quiet grief for a world that seems to be fading. But that is not the whole story. The final note in this sombre chapter is not one of despair, but one of profound and quiet hope. For if there is one defining characteristic of the natural world, it is its immense resilience. Life is tenacious, it adapts, it endures, and it finds a way. The story of the pollinators is not over, and in the quiet corners of our world the persistent, gentle hum of life continues. This resilience can be seen in the surprising adaptability of certain species. While some pollinators are highly specialised and vulnerable, others are generalists. They are the opportunists, the survivors. A bumblebee, finding that its preferred flower has not yet bloomed, may shift its attention to another species. A honeybee colony, faced with a shortage of one resource, will redirect its foragers to another. This flexibility is a powerful buffer against change, allowing these species to navigate the uncertainties of a shifting world. We can also see resilience in the persistence of life in unexpected places. In the heart of our bustling cities, life finds a way. A forgotten railway embankment, a patch of weeds in a vacant lot, or a rooftop garden can become a vital oasis for urban pollinators. Here, in these small, fragmented pockets of wildness, bees and butterflies can find the resources they need to survive. These urban sanctuaries are a testament to nature's refusal to be neatly confined to our designated parks and wilderness areas. Life spills over, taking root in the cracks and crevices of the world we have built, and in the great wild landscapes that remain. The ancient rhythms continue. In the vast forests and remote mountain meadows, the deep foundational relationships between plants and their pollinators are still strong. These areas act as vital reservoirs of biodiversity, holding the genetic heritage of countless species. They are the living heartlands from which life can spread and recover, a source of hope and renewal for the entire planet. The resilience of the wild is not a justification for inaction. It does not absolve us of the need to address the challenges we have created. Rather, it should serve as our greatest source of inspiration. Nature is not a fragile, delicate thing that will shatter at the slightest touch. It is a powerful, dynamic, and endlessly creative force. It has an incredible capacity to heal itself, if only it is given the chance. By observing this quiet, persistent strength, we can learn to work with the grain of nature rather than against it. We can see that our own small efforts are not hopeless gestures, but are contributions to a powerful, existing current of resilience. The wild is not waiting for us to save it. It is inviting us to join in its timeless, persistent work of regeneration. This hopeful note prepares us to think about how we can become a part of that beautiful, resilient process. Flowing from the quiet hope found in nature's resilience, we now turn our gaze forward. This chapter is about the gentle, positive actions we can take to support our pollinators. It is a story of healing and of hope, framing our efforts not as grand, difficult labours, but as simple, quiet acts of kindness, the planting of seeds, both literal and metaphorical, for the garden of tomorrow. We previously envisioned the modern landscape as a beautiful ancient tapestry that has been cut and frayed, its continuous patterns broken into a patchwork of isolated squares. One of the most hopeful and powerful ways we are learning to help our pollinators is by finding ways to mend this tapestry, to reweave the threads of connection that have been lost. This work is happening on both a grand and a small scale, and it is all about creating corridors, bridges, and pathways that allow pollinators to move safely through the world once more. On a large landscape scale, conservationists and city planners are beginning to think about pollinator corridors. A corridor is a protected strip of habitat that connects two or more larger isolated patches of nature. It might be a stretch of native wildflowers planted along a highway median, a restored riverbank that runs through a city, or even a series of connected parks and green spaces. These corridors act as living highways for wildlife, allowing pollinators to travel from one island of habitat to another. This movement is crucial. It allows them to access a wider range of food sources, to find new places to nest, and most importantly, it allows them to find mates from different populations. This reconnecting of isolated groups is vital for maintaining genetic diversity, which is the key to a species' long-term health and adaptability. A pollinator corridor is a simple but profound idea. It recognizes that nature does not exist in neat separate boxes, but in a flowing, interconnected network. By mending the tapestry, we are helping to restore the natural flow of life across the landscape. This idea of mending can also be applied to our agricultural lands. For decades, the trend in farming was towards ever larger, cleaner fields, with every last weed removed. But today, there is a growing understanding that a little bit of wildness is a very good thing. Farmers are beginning to implement practices like planting wildflower strips along the edges of their fields, or creating beetle banks, raised mounds of earth planted with native grasses and flowers that provide shelter and food for beneficial insects. These small changes act like threads of life woven back into the monoculture of the farm. They provide a refuge and a food source for the very pollinators that the crops depend on, creating a healthier, more resilient and more productive farm ecosystem. Even power line corridors, those long, straight clearings that cut through our forests, are being reimagined. Instead of being mowed down to grass, they can be planted with low-growing native shrubs and wildflowers, transforming them from scars on the landscape into vast, continuous ribbons of prime pollinator habitat. The act of mending the tapestry is a shift in perspective. It is about seeing the spaces between our designated natural areas as opportunities. It is about recognizing that a roadside, a farm-filled edge, or a small urban park is not insignificant, but is a potential thread that can be used to stitch the world back together. It is a quiet, hopeful act of landscape-scale healing, a promise to our pollinators that we will try to make the journey through their world a little bit easier and a lot more connected. From the grand, landscape-scale work of mending the tapestry, let us now bring our focus down to a more personal and intimate scale. Let us take this gentle idea of stewardship and bring it right into our own homes, our own small patches of earth. This is an invitation to you, the listener, to see your own space, whether it's a backyard, a balcony, or a window ledge, with new eyes. It is an invitation to imagine that space as a potential sanctuary, a safe harbour for the tiny, winged travellers passing through your neighbourhood. The creation of a sanctuary begins not with a shovel, but with a simple shift in thought. It is the quiet, conscious decision to extend a welcome to the natural world. It is the act of seeing a perfectly manicured lawn not as a symbol of order, but as a food desert, and imagining it instead with a small patch of clover or a drift of wild flowers. It is seeing an empty terracotta pot not just as a decoration, but as a potential life-saving oasis for a thirsty bee. This gentle change in perspective is the most important first step, the fertile ground from which a beautiful sanctuary can grow. This invitation is a quiet whisper, not a loud shout. Nature is attuned to the most subtle of signals. The simple act of adding a pot of native bee balm to your porch is a fragrant, colourful message that a hummingbird or a bumblebee can read from the sky. The choice to delay your garden clean-up in the fall, to leave the seed heads and the fallen leaves, is a quiet act of generosity, offering food for birds and vital shelter for overwintering insects. Think of it as opening a small, charming bed and breakfast. You're providing a clean room, a safe place to rest, and a delicious meal for weary travellers. You do not need a large estate to do this. A single, well-chosen plant in a pot can be a 5-star hotel for a tiny native bee. This small act of hospitality, when repeated in yards and on balconies all across a neighbourhood, begins to reweave the tapestry on a local scale, creating a network of safe harbours that stitch the community together for these small creatures. This invitation is also a profound act of trust. It is the faith that if you build it, they will come. It is a beautiful and reaffirming moment when you see a butterfly land on a flower that you planted for it, or when you discover a tiny leaf-cutter bee has made a neat, circular cut from a rose leaf to build its nest. It is a sign that your invitation has been received, that your quiet offer of sanctuary has been gratefully accepted. This is the beginning of a conversation, a gentle, reciprocal relationship between you and the wildness that shares your world. Once you have extended the quiet invitation from your heart, the next joyful step is to prepare the feast. The most beautiful and effective way to do this is to think of your garden as a living calendar, a rainbow of blooms that unfolds through the entire rhythm of the seasons. A true sanctuary provides a reliable welcome from the first warm days of spring to the last golden moments of autumn. By planting a rainbow for the seasons, you are ensuring that your bed and breakfast is always open, with a fresh and nourishing meal ready for any guest who arrives. Let us begin with the pale, hopeful colours of early spring. This is a time of great urgency for pollinators. Queen bumblebees are emerging from hibernation, famished and in desperate need of energy to start their colonies. By planting early blooming bulbs like crocuses and grape hyacinths, you're offering the first life-saving meal of the year. The flowers of native trees and shrubs like willows and maples are also an essential early-season buffet, often providing the most significant source of food when little else is available. As the world awakens into the full, vibrant greens of late spring and early summer, your rainbow can deepen in colour. Now is the time for the blues, purples and yellows that are so beloved by bees. Plants like catmint, salvia and lupine will draw them in. This is also when you can plant the most important flower for the monarch butterfly, the milkweed. Its clusters of pink and white flowers provide vital nectar for the adults, and its leaves are the only food source for their growing caterpillars. By planting milkweed, you are creating not just a restaurant but a nursery. As the long, warm days of midsummer arrive, your rainbow can explode into its brightest and most vibrant hues. This is the time for the warm reds, oranges and pinks that call to the butterflies and hummingbirds. A patch of red bee balm or a trumpet vine will become a hummingbird's favourite destination. Broad, flat-topped flowers like purple coneflowers, black-eyed Susans and zinnias provide the perfect landing pads for butterflies to rest and bask in the sun while they feed. A garden in midsummer, rich with these colours, can become a bustling, joyful hub of activity. Finally, as the season begins to wane and the air grows crisp, your rainbow's task is not yet over. The deep, rich colours of autumn are just as critical. A new generation of queen bees is preparing for hibernation, and migrating monarchs need to build up their strength for the long journey south. The deep purples of New England aster and the brilliant, golden sprays of goldenrod are the superstars of the fall garden. They are the final, essential pantry of the year, providing a last, life-sustaining meal that ensures the cycle of life will continue. By painting your garden with this full spectrum of seasonal colour, you're creating a masterpiece of hospitality, a reliable and life-giving sanctuary that honours the entire journey of the pollinators you have invited to share your space. A true sanctuary, a true place of welcome, offers more than just a wonderful meal. It also provides a place to rest, to find shelter, and to raise a family. While the flowers of your rainbow garden provide the essential food, creating a space for pollinators to rest and nest is an equally important act of quiet hospitality. It is about thinking beyond the bloom and considering the complete life cycle of these tiny guests, ensuring they have everything they need to make your sanctuary their home. Many of our most important pollinators, particularly our native bees, are not social creatures that live in large hives. About 70% of our native bee species are solitary ground nesters. They build their nests in small underground tunnels. To provide for them, one of the simplest and most effective things we can do is also one of the easiest. Leave a small patch of bare, undisturbed earth. It does not need to be a large area. A small, sunny, well-drained spot at the back of a garden bed is perfect. By resisting the urge to cover every square inch of our gardens with thick layers of wood mulch, we are leaving the door open for these gentle, ground-nesting bees to check in and build their homes. Another 30% of our native bees are cavity nesters. They make their homes in the hollow stems of plants or in old beetle burrows in dead wood. We can provide for them by being a slightly less tidy gardener. When you're cleaning up your garden in the fall, consider leaving the hollow stalks of plants like sunflowers or coneflowers standing through the winter. These hollow stems provide perfect pre-made nesting tubes for mason bees and leafcutter bees. A small pile of logs or a dead branch left in a quiet corner of the yard can also become a bustling apartment complex for these cavity nesters. You can also create a bee hotel by drilling holes of various sizes into an untreated block of wood and mounting it in a sunny, protected spot. This provides a clean, safe nursery for the next generation of pollinators. Butterflies and moths also need places to rest and shelter. A small brush pile in a corner of the yard can provide a safe haven from predators and bad weather. Many butterflies and moths spend the winter not as adults but as eggs, caterpillars, or chrysalises, often hidden in the leaf litter on the ground. By choosing to leave the leaves in our garden beds in the fall instead of raking them all away, we are providing a vital insulating blanket that protects these overwintering insects, ensuring they will emerge safely in the spring. And finally, every living creature needs water. Pollinators can often drown in a deep bird bath. A simple, shallow dish of water with some pebbles or marbles placed in it can provide a safe place for them to land and take a drink. The pebbles give them a safe perch, so they can sip without the risk of falling in. Placing this small water source near your flowering plants creates a full-service sanctuary, a place to eat, a place to drink, and a place to rest. These are all small, simple acts. They do not require great effort or expense. They mostly require a gentle shift in our perspective, a willingness to embrace a little bit of wildness, a little bit of untidiness in our own spaces. They are quiet acts of generosity, transforming our gardens from a simple display into a true, living and welcoming home. As we tend to our own small sanctuaries, it is comforting to know that this same ethos of gentle, conscious gardening is taking root on a much larger scale. Our personal acts of stewardship are a reflection of a quiet revolution that is happening in the vast fields of our farmlands. A growing number of farmers are embracing a gentler way of farming, a set of practices that seek to work in harmony with the natural world, transforming their farms from simple factories into complex, thriving ecosystems. This is the gardener's touch, applied to the great landscapes that feed us. This approach, often called regenerative or sustainable agriculture, is built on a simple but profound principle. A healthy farm is a complete ecosystem. It recognises that the health of the soil, the cleanliness of the water, and the diversity of life on the farm are not separate from the goal of growing food. They are essential to it. And at the heart of this vision is a deep respect for the role of the pollinator. One of the most visible signs of this gentler approach is the return of diversity to the agricultural landscape. Instead of planting a single crop from horizon to horizon, farmers are beginning to integrate other plants back into the system. We have already seen the use of wildflower strips along field edges, which act as permanent cafeterias and homes for native bees. Another powerful technique is the use of cover crops. In the seasons when the main cash crop is not growing, instead of leaving the soil bare, farmers will plant a cover crop like clover or vetch. These plants do many wonderful things. They protect the soil from erosion. They add valuable nutrients back into the earth, and when they flower, they provide a massive and vital food source for pollinators during a time of year when food might otherwise be scarce. Another key aspect of this gentler way is a dramatic reduction in the reliance on chemical pesticides. Instead of spraying entire fields with broad-spectrum insecticides, farmers are using more targeted, intelligent approaches. This is known as Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. It involves carefully monitoring pest populations and using chemicals only as a last resort. Before spraying, a farmer might release beneficial insects like ladybugs that prey on the pests. They might set up traps or time their planting to avoid the peak life cycle of a particular pest. By reducing pesticide use, these farmers are making their fields safer for all insects, including the vital pollinators. This approach also involves changing the way the land itself is treated. Many regenerative farmers practice no-till or low-till agriculture, which means they disturb the soil as little as possible. This is crucial for the 70% of our native bee species that nest in the ground. A tilled field is a destroyed city for these ground-nesting bees. By leaving the soil intact, farmers are preserving the homes of these essential, free helpers who live right there on the farm. This shift is not just an act of environmental charity. It makes good economic sense. A farm with a healthy, diverse population of native pollinators is more resilient. It is less dependent on the rental of expensive honeybee hives. Its crops are often more thoroughly pollinated, leading to higher yields and better quality produce. The farmer who embraces this gentler way is not just a food producer. They are a steward of the land, a caretaker of an ecosystem. They are demonstrating that we can feed our world while also nourishing the very systems that make it all possible, ensuring that the harvest of sunlight will continue for generations to come. We have imagined the invitation, planted the rainbow, and provided a place for rest. Now we arrive at the final, and perhaps most rewarding part of this gardener's touch. It is the simple, meditative act of quiet observation. This part of our journey requires no tools, no digging, and no planting. It asks only for a few moments of our time, a comfortable place to sit, and a willingness to be present, to watch, and to listen to the gentle life that we have invited into our world. Find a quiet moment on a sunny afternoon. Settle yourself near the flowers you have planted. Let your breathing slow, and simply allow your attention to rest on the life that is unfolding before you. Notice the different kinds of bees that are visiting. See the large, fuzzy bumblebee with its slow, deliberate movements. As it pushes its way deep into a blossom, notice the smaller, faster honeybee, its pollen baskets laden with gold, and look closer still for the tiny, metallic green sweat bees, the almost invisible specialists going about their work. You do not need to know their names. The simple act of noticing their diversity is enough. Watch the flight of a butterfly. See how it drifts on the air, how it lands so delicately on a flower, how it uncoils its long proboscis to drink. Follow its meandering path from one bloom to the next. Notice the colours on its wings, the intricate patterns that nature has painted upon it. Listen. Listen for the different sounds of the garden. There is the deep, resonant buzz of the bumblebee, a sound you can almost feel in your chest. There is the higher-pitched hum of the honeybees, the collective sound of their industry. And if you're lucky, you may hear the astonishingly fast, whirring hum of a hummingbird's wings, a sound that is here one moment and gone the next. The air in a pollinator sanctuary is not silent. It is filled with the subtle, living music of its inhabitants. This quiet observation is a form of meditation. It is a way of stepping out of the busy, noisy world of human concerns and entering into the timeless, peaceful world of the garden. For a few moments, your worries and your to-do lists can fade into the background. Your world can shrink down to the size of a single flower, to the journey of a single bee. This practice can cultivate a profound sense of peace, a deep feeling of connection to the natural world. It is also a form of learning. Through quiet observation, you will begin to notice the subtle patterns of your sanctuary. You will see which flowers are the most popular and which pollinators visit at different times of day. You will witness the small dramas of the garden, the spider waiting patiently in its web, the bee meticulously cleaning its antennae. You will become the resident naturalist of your own small patch of earth. This, ultimately, is the greatest reward of the gardener's touch. It is not just the knowledge that you're helping the pollinators. It is the gift that they give back to you, the gift of quiet wonder, the gift of beauty, and the gift of a deeper, more personal connection to the intricate, humming, and miraculous web of life. Having explored the challenges and the hopeful actions, we now arrive at a place of gentle synthesis. In this chapter, we will weave together all the threads of our journey, from the single pollen grain to the global food web, into the grand and beautiful concept of biodiversity. We will come to see the world as a vast shimmering web of life in which every single thread is connected and every connection matters. As we draw towards the end of our journey, let us rest for a moment and consider the single most important idea that has been humming beneath our entire story, the idea of interconnectedness. We have seen how a flower is connected to a bee, how that bee is connected to a bear, and how that bear is connected back to the soil. These connections are like shimmering invisible threads that link every living thing to every other living thing. Together they form a vast and intricate tapestry, a delicate and resilient structure that we call biodiversity. This web of life is the central metaphor for understanding our planet, and pollinators are some of its most important and tireless weavers. Biodiversity is, in its simplest sense, the variety of life on Earth. It is the breathtaking diversity of species, from the smallest bacterium to the largest blue whale. It is the genetic diversity within each of those species, the subtle variations that allow them to adapt and evolve, and it is the diversity of the ecosystems themselves, the rich variety of forests, grasslands, coral reefs and deserts that house all of this life. But biodiversity is more than just a list of species or habitats. It is about the relationships between them. It is about the invisible threads. Think of an ecosystem as a beautifully woven web, glistening in the morning dew. Each strand of silk represents a species. The points where the strands connect represent the interactions between them. The predator and its prey, the plant and the herbivore, and of course, the flower and its pollinator. The pollinator's thread is a special one. It does not just connect 2 points, it is a radial thread, a line that runs from the very centre of the web, the plant life that captures the sun's energy, out to countless other points. The pollinator is the creature that takes the foundational energy of the plant world and makes it available to the rest of the web. This web is both incredibly strong and incredibly delicate. Its strength comes from its complexity. A web with many threads and many connections can withstand a lot of stress. If one thread breaks, the others can take up the strain. This is the principle of resilience. An ecosystem with a high level of biodiversity, with many different types of plants, pollinators, and other animals, is more stable and better able to recover from disturbances like a drought, a fire, or the outbreak of a disease. But the web is also delicate. The loss of even a single thread can send a tremor through the entire structure. And if the thread that is lost is a keystone species, a central, heavily connected point in the web, the damage can be catastrophic. The loss of a key pollinator can cause dozens of other threads to weaken or break, as the plants that depend on it fail to reproduce, and the animals that depend on those plants for food begin to struggle. Seeing the world through this lens of the web of life changes our perspective. It helps us to understand that no species exists in isolation. The health of the orchid is tied to the health of the bee. The health of the bee is tied to the health of the mouse, and the health of the mouse is tied to the health of the owl. We are all, every one of us, a single thread in this vast and beautiful web. The gentle hum of the pollinator is the sound of the web being woven, the sound of the invisible threads being spun and connected moment by moment, creating the strong, resilient, and life-sustaining fabric of our world. Within the grand, shimmering architecture of the web of life, it is tempting to focus on the thickest, most apparent threads, the large, charismatic animals, or the dominant, widespread species. But the true strength and resilience of the web lies in its entirety, in the inclusion of every single thread, no matter how small, how humble, or how seemingly insignificant. The profound truth of biodiversity is that every thread matters. The loss of any one of them, even the thinnest and most overlooked, diminishes the whole, causing a subtle tremor to pass through the entire structure. In our journey, we have met the celebrated pollinators, the honeybees and the hummingbirds. These are the strong, visible threads that are easy to appreciate. Their importance is undeniable. But we have also met the unsung heroes, the fly, the beetle, the ant, the lizard, the moth. These are the finer threads, the ones that are often hidden in the shadows, or are so common that we take them for granted. Yet, their contribution to the integrity of the web is absolutely vital. Consider the humble fly. A world without the pollinating services of flies would be a world with less chocolate, but it would also be a world where many wild plants, particularly in alpine and Arctic regions where bees are scarce, would be unable to reproduce. These small, hardy insects are the key pollinators in some of the world's harshest environments. They are a thread of connection in places where few others can exist. Or think of the messon soil beetle, the ancient gardener. The plants that rely on beetles, like the magnolia, are some of the most ancient flowering plants on Earth. They are living links to a primordial past. The beetle is the thread that keeps this ancient lineage alive, preserving a piece of the planet's evolutionary history. This principle extends to the incredible diversity within pollinator groups themselves. We often speak of the bee as if it were a single entity. But in North America alone, there are over 4,000 species of native bees. There is the tiny Perdita minima, one of the smallest bees in the world, which specializes on a single type of desert flower. There is the squash bee, whose life is perfectly synchronized with the blooming of our summer gourds. There is the mason bee, the leaf-cutter bee, and the sweat bee. Each of these thousands of species is a unique thread, with its own specific relationships, its own flight season, and its own nesting habits. This diversity is the ecosystem's greatest strength. It is nature's insurance policy. A year with a cold, wet spring might be a difficult one for the honeybees, but it might be a perfect year for the bumblebees, who are better adapted to fly in such conditions. A disease might sweep through one species, but the others will be there to take up the slack. A single crop might be pollinated by a dozen different types of bees. This redundancy, this richness of variety, is what ensures that the essential work of pollination gets done year after year in the face of a constantly changing world. When we lose one of these threads, we lose more than just a species. We lose a unique set of relationships. We lose a specific and irreplaceable function within the ecosystem. The web becomes simpler, less complex. And a simpler web is a weaker web. It is more brittle, more vulnerable to collapse. The loss of a single specialist bee might not seem like much, but it could mean the end for the specific wildflower that depended on it. And the loss of that wildflower could affect the other insects that fed on its leaves, and the birds that fed on those insects. The tremor passes through the web. This is why the conservation of biodiversity is so critical. It is not just about saving the beautiful and the famous. It is about saving all the parts, all the quiet, humble and strange little threads that hold the entire masterpiece together. Every time we see a tiny hoverfly on a daisy, or notice a beetle clambering inside a water lily, we are witnessing the strength of the web. We are seeing a vital thread doing its quiet, essential work, and it is a profound and humbling reminder that in the great web of life, there is no such thing as an insignificant species. Another way to feel the beautiful complexity of biodiversity is to shift our central metaphor from a silent visual web to a vibrant auditory one. Let us imagine a healthy ecosystem not as a tapestry to be seen, but as a symphony to be heard. In this grand orchestra of life, each species plays its own unique instrument, contributing its own specific note to the overall harmony. A healthy, diverse ecosystem is one with a rich, complex and resilient sound, a symphony where thousands of different instruments are all playing in concert. In this metaphor, the plants are the foundation of the orchestra. They are the quiet, steady rhythm section, the deep, resonant cellos and basses that hold the entire piece together. They establish the key and the tempo, capturing the energy of the sun and turning it into the living music of the world. The pollinators are the melody players. They are the violins, the flutes, and the clarinets, the voices that carry the main theme of the symphony. The honeybee, with its industrious buzzing, might be the steady, familiar melody of the first violin. The hummingbird, with its high-energy whirring, could be the fast, brilliant piccolo. The butterfly would be a silent instrument, a visual harmony, its fluttering wings like a conductor's graceful hands. Each pollinator, with its unique preferences and behaviours, plays a different melodic line, weaving in and out of the foundational rhythm of the plant world. The other animals in the ecosystem add their voices to the chorus. The songbirds are the sopranos, their calls and songs adding a layer of intricate beauty. The squirrels and chipmunks are the percussionists, their chattering and rustling adding texture and rhythm. The predators, the fox and the hawk, are the dramatic trombones and trumpets, their presence adding a sense of tension and balance to the composition. A healthy ecosystem, rich in biodiversity, is a symphony at its grandest. The music is layered, complex, and full of nuance. There are thousands of instruments, each playing its part. If one of the flute players is having an off day, the melody is still carried by the clarinets and the oboes. The richness of the orchestra ensures that the music is stable and resilient. This is the sound of a healthy, thriving world. Now, imagine what happens when biodiversity is lost. It is like taking instruments away from the orchestra one by one. The loss of a single species of native bee is like a second violinist quietly packing up their instrument and leaving the stage. At first, the change might be subtle, barely noticeable in the grand sound of the full orchestra. But then another player leaves, and another. The violin section becomes weaker, the melody less rich. The harmony starts to sound thinner, simpler. If a keystone species is lost, it is like the entire cello section suddenly going silent. The foundational rhythm is disrupted, and the entire symphony can begin to fall out of tune. The music becomes disjointed, less resilient, and more vulnerable to collapse. A simple, impoverished ecosystem is like an orchestra with only a few instruments left. The music it produces is monotonous and fragile. This metaphor of music helps us to feel the emotional and aesthetic dimension of biodiversity. The world is not just a machine that provides services. It is a place of incredible, living beauty. The complex harmony of a healthy ecosystem is a source of wonder and peace. By protecting biodiversity, we're not just protecting a resource, we are acting as the quiet guardians of a masterpiece, ensuring that the beautiful, complex and ancient music of our planet can continue to be played for all the generations to come. Let us now gently merge our two guiding metaphors, the silent web and the vibrant symphony, to arrive at a deeper and more active understanding of the pollinator's role. If the ecosystem is a grand tapestry, and its music is a complex harmony, then the pollinators are not just passive threads or melody players. They are the active creators, the tireless artisans who are constantly at work. Pollinators are nature's weavers, the living shuttles that move back and forth, stitching the fabric of life together. They are the conductors of the symphony, their constant movement and interaction creating the very pattern and music of the living world. A weaver's shuttle is a tool that carries the weft thread back and forth across the fixed warp threads on a loom, and in doing so, it creates the fabric. The pollinator is a living shuttle. The fixed warp threads are the plants rooted in the earth. The pollinator, the shuttle, picks up a thread of pollen from one plant and carries it across the loom to another, weaving it into the fabric. With every flight, with every visit, another thread is woven, another connection is made. The beautiful, complex pattern of the ecosystem's tapestry is the direct result of these millions upon millions of individual weaving motions. A honeybee, moving methodically through an apple orchard, is weaving a strong, simple cloth of fruitfulness. A butterfly, drifting for miles across a landscape, is a shuttle that carries a long, silken thread, stitching together distant patches of meadow and creating a pattern of genetic diversity and resilience. A bat flying through the desert night from one saguaro to another is weaving the tough, essential fabric of the desert ecosystem. The work is constant, a perpetual motion of creation that happens all day and all night, all around the world. In our other metaphor, the pollinator is the conductor of the symphony. A conductor does not make a sound themselves, but through their movements, they guide the entire orchestra, bringing the different sections in at the right time and controlling the tempo and dynamics of the music. The pollinator, in its role as a keystone species, acts in much the same way. Its presence and its choices dictate the rhythm and the richness of the entire ecosystem. When pollinators are abundant and diverse, the conductor is energetic and skilled. It brings in the full range of her instruments, from the deep notes of the fruit-bearing trees to the high, delicate notes of the wildflowers. It cues the songbirds that feast on the berries and the mammals that gather the nuts. The resulting music is rich, complex, and harmonious. The conductor, through its constant guiding motion, ensures that all the players are contributing to a beautiful and resilient composition. When pollinators decline, it is as if the conductor has become tired or has lost their way. They cue fewer instruments. The music becomes simpler, more monotonous. The vibrant melody of the understory wildflowers might fade away, and the deep rhythm of the canopy trees might become weaker. The entire symphony loses its richness and its power. Seeing pollinators as these active agents, as weavers and conductors, helps us to appreciate their profound creative role in the world. They are not just cogs in a machine. They are the artists, the creators, the agents of connection. Their constant, tireless movement is the force that builds the complexity and the beauty of the natural world. It is the energy that transforms a simple collection of individual species into a deeply interconnected, functioning and resilient whole. Their gentle humming work is the sound of the world being woven, the sound of the music being made. As our journey together draws to its final, peaceful close, we gently zoom our perspective out one last time, to a place of cosmic and intimate connection. This final chapter is a quiet lullaby, a soft reflection that connects the grand concept of the web of life to the simple, essential rhythm of our own breath and to the gentle act of falling asleep. As you rest here, on the edge of sleep, I invite you to bring your attention to your own breath. Feel the gentle, effortless rise and fall of your chest, the slow, quiet inhale and the soft, complete exhale. This simple, rhythmic cycle is the most fundamental process of your life, a constant, soothing exchange with the world around you. Now, let us use this gentle rhythm as a lens through which to see the entire, vast story of pollination, for in a beautiful and profound way, the work of the pollinators and the life of the plants they serve is a mirror of our own breath. The entire planet, in its own slow, patient way, is breathing, and the pollinators are an essential part of its respiration. Think of the life of a plant, of an entire ecosystem, as a single, long breath. The inhale is the process of gathering, of taking in. It is the roots of the plant drawing water and nutrients from the deep, dark earth. It is the leaves, in their silent wisdom, opening their pores to breathe in the carbon dioxide from the air. It is the flower, unfurling its petals to absorb the energy of the sun. This is the great inhale of the plant world, a gathering of all the raw materials of life, a slow, steady drawing in of the world's potential. The pollinator's visit is the gentle pause at the top of the breath. It is the moment of transformation, the quiet, magical instant where all that has been gathered is given a new purpose. The bee arrives, the pollen is transferred, and the flower is fertilized. This is the turning point, the moment that allows the breath to be released not as a simple sigh, but as an act of creation. Then comes the great exhale. This is the process of giving back, of releasing the fruits of all that has been gathered. The exhale is the plant redirecting its energy to swell an ovary into a ripe, juicy fruit. It is the creation of a seed, a tiny, perfect package of life and promise. It is the release of oxygen from the leaves, the very air that fills our own lungs, and it is the offering of the fruit to the world, an act of generosity that feeds the birds, the mammals, and the insects. The exhale of the planet is a breath of abundance, a release of nourishment that sustains the entire web of life. This cycle is happening all around you, all the time. As you are breathing in and out in this quiet moment, a flower in a distant meadow is inhaling the sun, a bee is making its transformative visit, and a berry is ripening on a branch, a slow, sweet exhale of life. Your own small, personal breath is a part of this vast planetary respiration. The oxygen you're inhaling right now is likely the gift of a plant's exhale. The gentle rhythm of your own body is perfectly in sync with the great, slow rhythm of the world. Seeing the world in this way can bring a profound sense of peace and connection. It reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but are an integral part of its most fundamental processes. Our breath is the planet's breath. The quiet work of the pollinator is the essential catalyst that turns the planet's inhale of sunlight and soil into its exhale of life and abundance. So as you continue to breathe, feel yourself as part of this grand, gentle cycle. With every inhale, feel the quiet potential of the world, and with every exhale, feel the gentle release, the letting go, the quiet abundance that allows all of life to rest and be nourished. As you continue to drift, held in the gentle rhythm of your own breath, let the world outside your window soften and fade. The sun has long since set, and the deep, quiet stillness of the night has settled over the landscape. The bustling activity of the day has ceased. The birds are silent in their nests. The squirrels are asleep in their trees. The busy, sun-loving bees and butterflies have all returned to their homes to rest. It is a time of profound peace and quiet, a time when the world seems to pause. But the work of life, the gentle breathing of the planet, has not stopped. It has simply changed its form, becoming quieter, softer, and more mysterious. As you lie here, Preparing for your own journey into sleep, remember that a whole other world is just now awakening outside. The silent work of the night is beginning. In the garden, the moonflower is unfurling its large white petals, a silent, slow-motion explosion of beauty that happens only in the dark. Its heavy, sweet perfume is beginning to drift on the cool night air, an invisible, fragrant invitation. And the invitation is being answered. As you rest, a hawk moth, one of the great messengers of the night, may be emerging to begin its nightly dance. It will hover before the moonflower, a blur of motion in the silvery light, its long tongue sipping the nectar that will fuel its flight. In this quiet, intimate exchange, a vital act of pollination is taking place, a connection being made while you're safe and resting. The garden is being tended to. In a distant desert, under the same moon, the great waxy flowers of the saguaro cactus are opening, their pale faces turned towards the starry sky, and from a deep cave miles away, a colony of nectar-feeding bats is taking to the air. They will fly across the dark, silent landscape, guided by scent and memory, to feast on the rich nectar of the cacti. As they plunge their furry faces into the blossoms, they will become completely covered in golden pollen, and they will carry this life-giving dust from one desert giant to another. The desert is being tended to. Even the fields that provide our food are not entirely still. The tiny, unassuming midges are active in the humid twilight, performing their delicate, essential work on the cacao flowers, ensuring that there will be a harvest of chocolate. The world of our own sustenance is being tended to. There is a deep comfort in this knowledge. It is the reassurance that we are not alone in the night. The great, gentle machinery of the planet does not shut down when we close our eyes. The work continues. Life is constantly being renewed. Connections are constantly being made, and the world is being held in a state of quiet, productive grace by these silent nocturnal messengers. As you let go and allow yourself to drift deeper into rest, you can do so with the peaceful knowledge that you're being watched over, not by a single guardian, but by a whole world of quiet, busy creatures who are continuing their ancient, silent work, ensuring that the world you wake up to will still be a world of beauty, abundance, and life. As the silent work of the night continues all around you, let us bring our focus to the ultimate product of all this tireless effort, the final, perfect gift of pollination. Let us consider the seed. Within this tiny, humble, and often overlooked object lies the sum total of our entire journey. It is a vessel of pure potential, a quiet and patient promise of a future yet to come. The seed is nature's most perfect symbol of rest and the deep, trusting faith in a future awakening, much like you, the listener, on the very edge of sleep. Every single seed, whether it is the tiny black speck of a poppy or the great heavy acorn of an oak, is the result of a successful connection. It is the physical embodiment of a pollinator's journey. It exists only because a bee, or a moth, or the wind, or a bat successfully carried a single grain of pollen from one flower to another. Inside that protective coat, the seed holds everything it needs for its future journey. It has the complete genetic blueprint for a new plant, a detailed instruction manual for becoming a towering tree or a delicate flower. It has a packed lunch, a small supply of nutrient-rich tissue called the endosperm, to give it the energy it needs for its first moments of growth. And it is in a state of profound rest, a deep dormancy that is very much like sleep. A seed can wait. It can lie in the dark, cool earth for days, for months, or in some cases for hundreds or even thousands of years, waiting patiently for the right signals to awaken. It is waiting for the warmth of the spring sun, the touch of a gentle rain, the perfect conditions for its journey to begin. This period of dormancy is not a state of nothingness. It is a state of quiet, powerful potential. It is a time of gathering strength, of preserving energy, of holding a dream of the future within its own small body. This is a beautiful mirror for the state of sleep that you are now approaching. Like the seed, you're preparing to enter a state of deep, restorative rest. Your body and mind are preparing to pause their daytime activities, to turn inward, and to enter a state of quiet potential. Sleep, like the dormancy of a seed, is not an empty time. It is a time of profound and essential work. It is when your body heals, your memories are consolidated, and your energy is restored for the day to come. As you drift closer to this state of peaceful dormancy, I invite you to think of yourself as a seed, settling into the soft, dark earth of your bed. You have gathered all the experiences of your day, and now it is time to rest, to hold them in a state of quiet potential. There is no need to strive, no need to do anything at all. You can simply trust in the process. Trust that, like the seed, you hold within you the promise of a new awakening. Trust that this period of quiet, deep rest is exactly what you need to grow, to heal, and to be ready for the light of a new day. The seed holds the promise of the flower, and your sleep holds the promise of your own gentle unfolding. As you settle deeper into this feeling of peaceful, seed-like rest, let us embrace one final comforting thought. It is the idea that the world you're about to leave behind for a few hours is not being abandoned. It is being held in a delicate and beautiful trust by the countless small creatures whose stories we have shared tonight. Their constant, quiet work is an assurance that the world will be safe and well tended while you sleep, allowing you to let go completely, knowing that everything is being taken care of. Think of the planet as a vast and beautiful garden, a grand estate that requires constant, gentle care. When the daytime gardeners, the bees, the butterflies, the hummingbirds, and ourselves retire for the evening, a new shift of caretakers arrives. These are the silent trustees of the night, the moths and the bats and the beetles who take over the watch. They are not paid for their work, nor do they seek any recognition. They act out of a deep, ancient instinct, a biological imperative that also happens to be a profound act of service. Their work is a form of quiet guardianship. The moth, dancing in the moonlight, is ensuring that the honeysuckle vine will be able to produce the berries that will feed the birds in the autumn. The bat visiting the agave is not only helping to create a human product, but is also ensuring the genetic health of a plant that is a cornerstone of its desert ecosystem. They are trustees of the future, performing the small essential tasks in the present that will guarantee the abundance and resilience of the world of tomorrow. This idea of a world held in trust can be a powerful antidote to any lingering anxieties or worries you may be carrying from your day. The problems and concerns of the world can feel vast and heavy, too much for any one person to bear. But in this quiet moment, you're invited to set that burden down. You can pass the responsibility, just for tonight, to these tiny, capable guardians. They have been performing this service for millions of years. They are experts in the art of quiet maintenance, of gentle, life-sustaining work. You can rest, because they are at work. You can let go of your vigilance, because they are vigilant. You can surrender to the peace of the night, knowing that the night is filled with a different kind of gentle, productive purpose. The world is not empty or unguarded in your absence. It is in fact humming with a quiet, efficient and benevolent energy. This is the final permission you may need to drift away. The permission to trust. Trust that the intricate, beautiful machinery of the world will continue to run without your conscious attention. Trust that the silent work of the night is enough. Trust that the web of life, so beautifully woven by these small creatures, is strong enough to hold the world safely through the dark hours until the morning light returns. Your only task now is to take care of your own small, precious part of this world, your own body, your own mind, by allowing it the deep, restorative peace it has earned. The world is being held in trust, and so you too can be held in the gentle, trusting embrace of sleep. Tonight, We have wandered through a world woven together by the tireless, gentle work of pollinators. We have seen how their quiet labour creates the very fabric of our ecosystems, stocking our pantries and painting our world with colour and life. As you now settle into the deepest part of your own rest, remember that the same kind of quiet, regenerative work is happening within you. Just as the moth and the bat are tending to the garden of the world while it sleeps, your own body is now beginning the silent, essential work of healing and restoration. The great, gentle rhythm of the planet is mirrored in the quiet rhythm of your own restorative sleep. So let go completely now and trust in this ancient process. There is nothing more for you to do but to receive this gift of rest. Allow the gentle hum of the world to fade and embrace the deep, peaceful silence of your own rejuvenating sleep. Rest now, for the world is being tended, and so are you. Thank you for joining me on another journey at Midnight Wanderer. Should you find yourself seeking another quiet exploration on a future evening, there are always more wonders of the universe to explore together. Until then, may your sleep be deep and your dreams be peaceful.